Good evening, everybody. Thank you for your patience this evening. We're going to go ahead and call to order the County Planning Commission for March 11th, 2024. If you'll please call the roll.
Yes, Commissioners Borja,
Here.
Conklin,
Here.
Corona Sabagnano.
Here.
Devlin.
Here.
And Rathel.
Here.
And we do have our quorum.
Thank you. If you all please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. If you'll please make the announcements for this evening.
Yes. The county fosters public engagement during the meeting and encourages public participation, civility, and use of courteous language. To make an in-person public comment, please complete a speaker request form and hand it to the clerk. The chairperson will call your name when it's your turn to make a comment. To make a public comment by telephone on the day of the meeting, dial 916-875-2500 to make a verbal public comment. Follow the prompts for instructions. Refer to the agenda and listen to the live meeting to determine when the best time is to call to be placed in queue for a specific agenda item or off-agenda matter. Callers may be on hold for up to an extended period of time and should plan accordingly. When the chairperson opens public comment for a specific agenda item or off-agenda matter, callers will be transferred from the queue into the meeting to make a verbal comment. Each agenda item queue will remain open until the public comment period is closed for that specific item. You may also send a written comment to boardclerk@saccounty.gov, and your comment will be routed to the board and filed in the record.
Thank you. And we'll move to the contested portion of the agenda this evening. If you'll please call item number 1.
Yes, item number 1 this evening is a use permit amendment and design review, and it is located at 1200 Jacob Lane in the Carmichael Old Foothill Farms community, and the environmental document is an environmental impact report.
Good evening. All right. Good evening, Chair Rathel and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Kimber Gutierrez. I'm a senior planner with Planning and Environmental Review, and I will be presenting the Jesuit High School Stadium Lighting Project. The project site is located at 1200 Jacob Lane, which is the address of Jesuit High School. Jesuit High School campus consists of 6 parcels situated south of Fair Oaks Boulevard, north of American River Drive, west of Jacob Lane, and east of Piccadilly Circle. It is within a predominantly residential neighborhood in the Carmichael Old Foothill Farms community. The campus itself spans the boundary between unincorporated communities of Arden Arcade and Carmichael Old Foothill Farms. However, the proposed parcel where the project is located is within the Carmichael Old Foothill Farms community. The project site is one of the campus's southern parcels and is the location of Jesuit High School's sport facilities, notably Marauder Stadium. The stadium parcel is approximately 12 acres in size and includes a baseball field, parking lot, and other sports facilities. The stadium is an artificial turf field with an 8-lane synthetic track surrounding the field perimeter. The stadium also includes a freestanding scoreboard with a public announcement system. The total maximum capacity for the stadium is approximately 3,000 people. And per the project applicant, the stadium is used by the Jesuit High School Athletic Program, Jesuit High School Junior Marauder Football League, the Parochial Athletic League flag football and track programs. The entire campus is zoned residential density 4, or RD4. The surrounding land uses are all single-family residential in the RD4 zoning district, with the exception of a pet hospital along Fair Oaks Boulevard. To the north across Fair Oaks Boulevard, there are single-family residential properties within the RD3 and RD2 zoning districts, and there's also a neighborhood preservation area north of Fair Oaks. Arden Hills Country Club is zoned RD2 and is also located north of Fair Oaks Boulevard, and the project site is also located 0.3 miles to the north of the American River Parkway. The staff report provides a more detailed entitlement history for the entire school. For my presentation, I will be focusing mostly on the entitlements associated with the stadium itself. Jesuit did begin operations in 1965. Historic aerial imagery does indicate the presence of a track and field in the same location as the current stadium. A grading permit for upgrades to the track and field facilities was approved in June of 2015, and the improvements consisted of an all-weather track, stadium field, stadium seating, and press box. On April 8th of 2019, the Planning Commission approved a use permit amendment and design review to legalize the scoreboard and to relocate the PA system on the athletic field, specifically within the football stadium itself. Several temporary use permits were also issued between 2018 and 2020 for events at the campus and for the use of field lights. A temporary use permit was also issued during the process of this request to use temporary field lights on August 25th and September 1st of 2023 for football games. The temporary use permit was issued to test the proposed protocol for night events provided by the applicant, which I will discuss further in my presentation. The applicant is requesting a use permit amendment to allow stadium lighting on the Jesuit High School athletic field, which is in the RD4 zoning district, and a design review to demonstrate compliance with countywide design guidelines. Along with the proposed stadium lighting, the proposed project is intended to expand the timing and use of the existing stadium facilities for several existing athletic program sports, including football, lacrosse, soccer, and track and field. The applicant is proposing to limit the use of the stadium lights to select evenings to accommodate athletic practices and competitions, primarily during the winter months when the sun sets early or during home football games. The timing of all other school-affiliated sports activities that do not utilize the stadium for practices or games would remain the same. An anticipated event lighting schedule was provided by the applicant and is included in your report package as attachment 7. The proposed times and days of practices and games vary by sport, with the latest game proposed to end by 10 p.m. on Fridays. Evening competitions with near-capacity crowds are anticipated to be held between 7 and 10 times per year, with evening competitions and practices with smaller crowds below capacity and minimal or no amplified sound are anticipated to be held 20 to 25 times per year. Here's the site plan of the stadium. The proposed request is to install 4 permanent stadium light poles at the Marauder Stadium. The locations I have indicated in orange. 2 of the light poles located on the north side of the stadium would be 100 feet tall. The other 2 light poles located on the south side of the stadium would be 90 feet tall. The proposed light poles will have LED lights affixed to the top and will be located approximately at the 10-yard lines of the football field. The estimated attendance for athletic competitions upon installation of the lights would vary by sport and other factors, including level of competition and weather conditions. The installation of the lights is expected to increase in attendance from 1,200 to 1,500 attendees for most regular season football games and up to 3,000 attendees for postseason games. For other special sporting events or playoffs, including track and field, lacrosse, and soccer, attendance is expected to be from 200 up to 900 attendees. There is no additional permanent parking proposed as part of the project. Both the Fair Oaks Boulevard and O'Donnell Drive main campus parking lot entrance, along with the parking lot adjacent to the project site located off of American River Drive, which is on the lower portion of the screen, would be made available for nighttime games at the stadium. The applicant also stated that there is the ability to park approximately 300 vehicles on the soccer rugby fields and another 100 vehicles on the south of the visitors' bleachers. Particularly, these areas can be utilized for larger football events during the summer and fall months, and an on-site parking summary is provided as attachment 8. During maximum capacity events, parking demand can exceed the number of on-site parking spots. So 2 off-site parking locations that Jesuit High School has previously arranged to use for major events are Arden Hills, which again is on the north side of Fair Oaks Boulevard, and the Rio Americano High School parking lot, which is on American River Drive, approximately half a mile southwest of the stadium. And attendees also park on nearby residential streets where it is allowed. Here is a detail of the proposed lights on the right, and on the left are provided renderings. The request also includes additional code-compliant lighting for the bleachers and pedestrian pathways of the stadium, as well as relocation of the existing PA speakers from the existing wooden utility poles to the new stadium light poles at their current authorized location at height, which is 44 feet above grade on the home side and 35 feet above grade on the visitor side. Here are more renderings from various viewpoints within the stadium and from adjacent streets. The applicant has submitted a protocol for night events document, which I mentioned earlier, and is also attachment 9 of the report. This protocol document would be used in conjunction with the high school's existing standard operations policies and procedures. And the guidelines contain procedures for notification to neighbors of high-profile, high-capacity events, communications to Jesuit high school families and students, as well as visiting schools, mostly regarding code of conduct expectations, duties of volunteers assigned to the events, management of on and off-site parking, and operation of the sound system. An environmental impact report was prepared pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act for this project and was released for public review on September 15, 2023. The Planning Commission met on October 23rd to receive comments on the draft EIR and voted to acknowledge the end of the comment period on October 30th. The Planning Commission also directed staff to prepare the final environmental impact report. We received a total of 58 comment letters during that comment period time and 15 testimonies, and a response to comments has been prepared and is part of that final environmental impact report. The EIR provides discussion on potential impacts to aesthetics, air quality, biological resources, cultural resources, noise, transportation, and tribal cultural resources. The EIR concludes that the project would result in significant and unavoidable impacts related to aesthetics and noise. All other anticipated impacts are less than significant or can be mitigated to a less than significant level. Staff has also prepared CEQA findings of fact and overriding considerations for the significant and unavoidable impacts related to aesthetics and noise, and a mitigation monitoring and reporting program was also prepared for the impacts identified as potentially significant but could be reduced to a less than significant level through inclusion of the recommended mitigation measures. The final environmental impact report was released on February 29th of this year. Moving on to advisory recommendations, the Design Review Advisory Committee met on April 21st of 2022 and recommends the Planning Commission find the project in substantial compliance with the design guidelines. The Carmichael Old Foothill Farm CPAC met twice on this project, the first on April 20th of 2022, and after discussions voted to continue the item until the environmental document was circulated for public review. We did have 11 members of the public speak on the project at that meeting, 8 in opposition and 3 in support. Those in operation spoke to the following concerns, which were parking during the event in surrounding residential neighborhoods, excessive noise levels during the existing events, lack of security during events, environmental impacts related to the proposed lights, the proposed schedule, specifically lights shutting off past 10 p.m., lack of transparency by Jesuit high school representatives, and traffic and congestion during the events as well. The CPAC met again on October 11th. This was following the release of the environmental document for public review. We had 20 commenters at that meeting. And most of the concerns were similar to those that were received at the April meeting: increased traffic, parking on residential streets, effects of ambient lighting, excessive noise levels, safety concerns, and decreased property values. Before voting, the CPAC did note that Jesuit could do more to better communicate with the neighbors and to address the noise, traffic, and safety concerns. However, it was also noted that the technology of the proposed lights would be better than the existing temporary lights that have been used through various permits. And the Carmichael Old Foothill Farm CPAC did vote to recommend the Planning Commission approve the requested entitlements with a 3 yes, 2 no vote. As I mentioned earlier, the entire campus kind of straddles the Arden Arcade and Carmichael communities. So Arden Arcade CPAC was notified of both the Carmichael Old Foothill Farm CPAC meetings, as was provided an opportunity to comment. The next two slides contain several operational conditions and restrictions included in attachment 2 of the staff report. So I am going to provide a summary of them as we go through. Starting with conditions 6 through 8, this requires the applicant to provide, to the extent feasible, a denser tree cover to further shield the proposed lights from American River Drive and residential properties to the south. Condition 9 requires, and I apologize, there's a little typo there, but the condition 9 does require the relocation of the PA system from the existing wooden utility poles to the stadium poles. It also allows for an alternative speaker configuration subject to review and approval by the county, provided the revised configuration achieves the noise performance standards set forth in mitigation measure NOI 1, which is also condition 23. And it would need to show that, that the revised speaker configuration would result in a reduction of sound from the PA at surrounding properties. Condition 10 limits outdoor events with amplified sound to be scheduled between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. I do need to ask that a revision be made to that condition. It currently says evening events, and I think we would need to eliminate the word evening, so it would just be events. Condition 11 limits the utilization of stadium lights to high school athletic program sports and events, and limits Jesuit High School Junior Marauder Football League, PAL Football League, and PAL track program to daytime use of the stadium only. Condition 12 currently prohibits the further use of temporary lights on Jesuit's campus. However, staff is recommending to strike condition 12 because Jesuit will likely be requesting further use of temporary lights for health and safety for the overflow parking areas. Conditions 13 through 15 limit the hours of operation of stadium lights for sports practices and games. Condition 16 requires night events to follow the protocol for night events that is included as part of the report package. Conditions 17 through 19 reiterate and require the use of overflow parking during high capacity events and use of off-site shared parking during maximum capacity events, and the obtainment of street use permits to post no event parking signs at the entrance to adjacent neighborhood streets and cul-de-sacs. And lastly, condition 20 requires the applicant to submit a yearly report for 3 years as a reporting mechanism, should they be approved. The proposed project was found consistent with the general plan, the community plan, and the zoning code as conditioned. It was concluded that the project is compatible with surrounding zoning and land uses because the proposed stadium lighting has been designed to reduce light trespass, glare, and sky glow to the maximum extent feasible using modern technology. Additionally, several operating conditions have been included to minimize external impacts to the surrounding area. There are significant and unavoidable environmental impact concerns. However, staff has prepared findings and overriding considerations that the Planning Commission can adopt to support the proposed project. And the project was supported by the Carmichael Old Foothill Farm CPAC and found consistent with the design guidelines by the DRAC. For these reasons, staff recommends the Planning Commission take the following actions: certify the final environmental impact report as adequate and complete, adopt the CEQA findings of fact and overriding considerations, approve the use permit amendment subject to findings and conditions, find the project in substantial compliance with the design guidelines subject to findings and conditions, and adopt the mitigation monitoring and reporting program. We have received a number of public comment letters as well, which I believe you have all received. And with that, I will conclude my presentation and can answer any questions.
33. Thank you, Ms. Gutierrez. Questions for staff this evening? Commissioner Conklin?
Yeah. Thank you very much. I want to appreciate county staff's time and energy in preparing this analysis. I was wondering if you could just elaborate a little bit more on condition 9 on the alternate speaker configuration, if you can just kind of better illuminate my understanding of what that might entail.
Sure. So the PA system per the 2018 use permit are currently located on wooden utility poles in the same locations as where the proposed stadium lights will go. And we are just having them relocate them from the poles to the actual stadium light poles themselves. Throughout the entire process, there has been some discussion on the applicant's part on, pursuing some sort of alternate configuration that would help lower sound impacts to the surrounding area. They're not ready at this time to pursue those alternative speaker configurations or technology. So this condition would allow them to kind of look into that further, and if they were able to come up with an alternative configuration that would meet the noise mitigation measures and show that there would be a reduction in the sound, then they could provide that to staff, and staff could review and accept that alternative configuration. Mm-hmm.
Other questions for staff this evening? Commissioner Corona-Sabagnano.
Thank you. So can you talk a little bit more about condition 20? Is there a mechanism for direct community feedback on how things are going, should this project be approved?
Yeah, so condition 20 pretty much puts most of the onus on the applicant to provide an annual report. We're asking them to show what they're anticipating coming up in the upcoming school year, and then following that, what actually happened and if there were any changes to what they were anticipating. In addition to that, when we receive that annual report, the project proponent will be responsible for posting that annual report on their website, and then the county also has a Jesuit High School webpage for this project that we will be posting that annual report to. Anyone who has subscribed to that webpage gets notifications of any updates to that webpage as well. Staff, the county will also be sending out a mailed notice to tenants and property owners within 1,500 feet of the subject property, and will allow 30 days for the public to review that annual report and provide any comments or concerns. In addition to that, I believe Jesuit also has an incidents and complaints line that they will also need to show if they received any incidents and complaints during the time of the annual report. And then staff will be contacting the sheriff's office for any calls of service during the times that are specified of having events as well. And then staff will be reviewing all the materials that were provided, reviewing the comments, and determining whether or not they were in compliance with the other conditions. If they were not, it does give us an opportunity to schedule the project before the Planning Commission, which could result in modification or potential revocation of the use permit itself.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Borja, Commissioner Devlin, any questions for staff this evening?
Not at this moment.
Thank you for the presentation. Just a minor quick question. I'm looking at the anticipated event lighting attachment that you have as part of the presentations. Mm-hmm. Do we anticipate that there would be any other events that would go above and beyond the events that were already identified in this list, especially the ones that are listed at under 80% or 100% or above? Or are we just limiting that into this schedule?
We aren't specifically, the conditions themselves aren't so restrictive that they limit them to these specific times or dates or anything like that. What the conditions do require is, football games would need to be scheduled to end at 10 p.m. and then any other sporting games and practices end by 9 p.m. Any other sport games end by 9 p.m. Any other sport practices end by 8 p.m. So we were just really focused on the time those events would end. In terms of anything outside of the lighting table, I would let the applicant respond to that if they are anticipating anything else, but that was the focus of our conditions.
Understood. Thank you.
All right, I got a few for you. Condition, and if I understand correctly, the two modifications that staff is proposing to the conditions in the packet is one, you're going to strike evening from condition 10.
Yes.
And then strike all of condition 12?
Yes.
All right. Condition number 11 seems to kind of have a distinction between PAL and junior marauders. Can you explain why those are specifically called out in condition 11, that they only are restricted to daytime use of the stadium?
Yes. During the process, we received quite a bit of concern and comments about other organizations or programs utilizing the stadium that are not associated with Jesuit. I think there's been a lot of concern that it would be something that could be rented out for other, people to use, and the concern that the number of events would increase because of that. So when shaping the project description and getting more information from the applicant, we really wanted to nail down who uses the stadium, and they did let us know that it is the athletic program, but then they also have the Junior Marauder Football League, as well as the PAL flag football and track program. The project description does provide a little bit more information. PAL is a sports league which is supervised by the Catholic Schools Department under the Diocese of Sacramento. So it's for grade school age kids, students to participate in, and they use it for certain events. My understanding is that both the PAL and the Junior Marauders, by regulation, are daytime only users.
Okay, so it was kind of an ongoing understanding of what the applicant was doing already.
Correct.
With PAL and Junior Marauder.
Yes.
Or some restrictions on their league. Okay. Can you explain a little bit on condition 14 and 15, what's driving the difference between football and other sports?
Yeah. So I guess football games are currently on Saturdays during the day, and so their desire was to move it to evenings on Fridays. One of the comments that we've heard overwhelmingly from the neighbors is that 10 p.m. is very late, and so there was much discussion on just limiting football to 10 p.m. And then the other sports providing some relief that they would not be ending that late and they would be ending a little bit earlier. I can let the applicant speak to a little bit more on the requirements of each leagues. My understanding is that CIF determines a lot of the regulation and the ruling of timing, days, et cetera. And so wanted to provide a little bit of flexibility and not completely condition it to stay towards the stadium light usage times that they provided, but there is some flexibility for it to move around, but making sure that not everything is going to go until 10 p.m.
So it's more of a league regulation that football has to go later than other sports? Is that staff's
I'm not sure
understanding?
if it's a requirement for football to go to 10 p.m.
Okay, I'll check
Yeah.
with the applicant
Yeah.
on that. And then I know some pictures were sent in as part of public comment showing the temporary lights, and you showed some renderings, so I'm just kind of holding those side by side, and I know probably not a fair comparison, but just you also mentioned that it would maybe be an upgraded technology. Do you know if the temporary lights were LED that were used for the games?
I am not sure. I don't think they were.
Okay,
I would ask the
I'll check with the
applicant.
applicant on that too.
Chair
And-
Rafel?
Yes. Sorry.
Sorry. Jessica Brandt with Planning. I just wanted to clarify for Commissioner Borja, Condition 11 does restrict use of the lights to high school athletic programs, sports, and events. So no battle of the bands, as fun as that is, no graduation, and the like. So I think you were getting to that a little bit too. I just wanted to bring back that. Thank you.
So the high school athletic in that condition applies to both program sports and the events after it. They're always high school athletic. Okay. Other questions for staff? Commissioner Conklin?
Thank you, Chair. Could you help kind of better understand for me the conditions around the sound limiter? I wanted to understand, as I understand it, there were a multitude of sites that were used in testing and to establish kind of peaks and averages for sound. And I just wanted to see if if there is if there's language here that says sound limiter, what that really says specifically. Is it a reduction by 50%, 30%, 20% for when a game ends, and to help eliminate some of that sound pollution that I think has been raised by local residents?
I'm going to let our environmental coordinator.
Good evening, Commissioners. Julie Newton, Environmental Coordinator with Planning. Our EIR does include a recommended mitigation measure that speaks to adjusting the noise specific to the PA system, and that measurement relies on measured decibels at the property level. So with that, the way this measure is spelled out is to reduce the PA output to a level that certain noise levels wouldn't be exceeded at the property line. Now that's specific to the PA system. The conclusions in the EIR are still significant and unavoidable because there's more noise beyond just that of the PA system with these games. It speaks to the crowd noise as well. But that's the measure in here does speak specifically to adjusting the PA system relative to the perimeter sound measurements.
And what is that adjustment?
The adjustment is based on a maximum noise level of 70 decibels.
70.
So my understanding, and I think the applicant team could speak more to the specifics of the sound system itself, but there are adjustments that can be made on that PA system to ensure what the output reaches that level.
Got it. And if I recall correctly, some of the visual aids there showed kind of averages between 55 and 65, so 4 decibels, and so 70 was kind of established as the peak limit.
Right, and that's also consistent with county noise policy.
Thank you. Got it. I think that answers that. Thank you.
Commissioner Cronus-Apinedo?
Yeah, I wanted to circle back to the condition 12, the temporary lights. So it's being stricken out, right? This condition is being removed, but I was just wondering why it was being removed rather than limiting to not allowing temporary lights on the campus. On the
Overflow parking
stadium,
area.
or the stadium.
Oh, the stadium.
Yeah, which I know is not the intent, and I appreciate it. Just for full disclosure, I met with the applicant. I went on campus and I saw, and it sounds like the limited lights are for temporary parking and potentially other sporting fields. But I'm just wondering if, rather than striking it, if it's best, or maybe if there was a consideration of just limiting and saying no temporary lights at the stadium. Additional use. Not that that's the intent, but given that, I think that's the concern from community.
Well, I'll just offer that by deleting condition number 12, you're not necessarily authorizing temporary lights. They're only authorized to have lighting based on whatever's approved in their temporary use permit or whatever this commission may approve in this use permit amendment. So this doesn't do anything really deleting 12. You have to look at the other approvals. And I don't know what the scope of the prior approval for temporary lighting is. I don't know what the time period is for that. And the only lighting that's going to be approved here in the staff report, I keep seeing stadium lighting, athletic fields. I saw pedestrian pathways, and whatever they have detailed in their site plans. But that's the extent of it,
Okay.
if that helps.
It does, yes. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff this evening? All right. Thank you, Ms. Gutierrez. All right. Before we move on to the applicant's presentation, I'm just going to give commissioners a moment. I know you brought up that you had met with the applicant. I'm just going to take a moment and we can all disclose who we've met with leading up to this meeting tonight. I'll start us off. I've met with the applicant team on site for the project, and I've also Zoomed with some of the neighbors that live near the project.
I'll share that I've met with the applicant and toured the projected site, as well as met with many of the local residents in the immediate area, as well as walked around physical location of the streets from Piccadilly area and adjacent to some of the acoustical areas that were tested.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also met with the applicant as well as a group of neighbors as well.
Thank you, Chair. I've also met with the applicant on site at the high school and at the football field, and shared correspondence with the neighbors that have also provided concerns.
Thank you. All right. With that, we'll move on to the applicant's presentation. We're going to get the applicant sworn in, but we're actually going to get everyone that wants to speak tonight to stand up for me. We'll get you guys all sworn in at once.
Okay.
I know we have a lot of you tonight, so I'm going to turn it over to the clerk to get you all sworn in.
Okay. So if you'd all please raise your right hand, as quite a number of you are already doing, and the appropriate response is I do. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give this commission is the truth, so help you God? And if you do not swear, do you so affirm?
I do.
Okay. And when you come to the podium, if you would please state your name for the record and make this statement, I have been sworn. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Rathel, Commissioners. I'm Matt Kiesling of Taylor, Wiley & Kiesling here tonight on behalf of the applicant Jesuit, and I have been sworn. Before I get going with our presentation, I would like to take a minute to thank staff for their hard work on this, particularly Jessica Brandt, Julie Newton, and our project manager, Kimber Gutierrez. This project was applied for in 2021. It's been several years of work from the staff, and we really appreciate the effort they've put in, as you could tell from Kimber's presentation. She's steeped in this project at this point. With that said, moving on to our presentation, we're here tonight requesting a modification of the use permit that authorized the stadium speakers and the scoreboard in order to now allow the stadium to also include lights. And just for a little perspective, Jesuit has been part of the Carmichael and Arden Arcade community since 1963. It truly is a Carmichael cornerstone, shall we say. It has educated 11,300 young men in that community that have gone on to be active members of this community and the County of Sacramento. In addition to having fantastic academics, Jesuit has also excelled at athletics. For the last several decades, Jesuit's football team has been listed amongst the Sacramento Bee's top 25 programs throughout the region. That's not just Sacramento, that includes all the way to the East Bay and south into Stockton. You can see last year, Jesuit was ranked number 9 in the region. And although it has an amazing athletic program, there's one thing that sets Jesuit apart from the other teams listed right there before you. It is the only school that does not have stadium lights. It is the only school on that list that is playing on Saturday afternoons rather than under the Friday night lights. And so we're here tonight requesting that you authorize Jesuit to install lights at Marauder Stadium. There's a lot of buttons I need to push. So you may be asking yourself, if Jesuit's been here for 61 years and has such fantastic athletics, why does it need lights now? Why lights? And I prepared this slide and was ready to go through each and every one of these reasons why you ought to approve this tonight. But I look around at the audience and I realize we have a lot of people here that intend to talk to you tonight and tell you why they think these lights are justified. And so I'm going to skip this slide, except for number 2. I just want to touch on this one point for health and safety. Last year, we had a coach fall to the ground on the field that had to be taken inside and put into an ice bath. Because in 2015, when we redid the track and redid the stadium, like every other high school in this state that has been plagued by droughts, we switched to artificial turf. And artificial turf is great. There's no water needed, there's not a lot of upkeep and maintenance, but one thing that's not a downside of it, it's hot. It gets really hot. And when it's 110 outside in Sacramento in August, it's about 140 down there on the field, and you have young men in full pads running around. And this project before you tonight allows us to make a slight adjustment to how Jesuit undertakes its sports so that those events do not need to be a health and safety risk for both the students, the coaches, and the thousands of parents, grandparents, children, and members of the community that are sitting in medal stands. And though we believe it is justified that these lights are warranted, that it is time to approve these lights, we also recognize that approving these lights will have an impact on our neighbors. There's no way to deny that. In fact, Kimber walked through the history of the approvals here and noted that at the CPAC there was a lot of discussion. And it was pointed out by CPAC members that we needed to have more community outreach. I will say that since that 2022 CPAC meeting, Jesuit has met extensively with the neighbors through multiple good neighbor meetings held on site, as well as individual discussions with neighbors, even going into homes and hosting coffees to hear more about what the concerns are. And as an outgrowth of that process, we created the Nighttime Protocol Events Manual, which is a part of your packet, and through condition of approval 16 actually becomes binding upon Jesuit for any nighttime event occurring under the lights. We're required to operate in compliance with those protocols. Those protocols explicitly say what we do before a nighttime event, what we do during the nighttime event, what we do after the nighttime event. And in fact, we implemented those this last fall when we had temporary lights allowed for 2 football games, and the outcome was rather impressive. So before I go further, I do want to address head-on a couple of misconceptions that have come up. The first Kimber touched on, which is if Jesuit is approved for lights, suddenly Jesuit is going to have a lot of additional events at the campus, ones that haven't even been contemplated yet. That simply is not the case. Through this project, we are not seeking to add experiences, but simply to enhance the athletic experiences that we already have. This will not be a place that is going to be rented out to the highest bidder. This is for Jesuit and for Jesuit's campus and its affiliated interests, which were mentioned, JJM, PAL, and flag football. The other thing that has been stated multiple times, and I believe is in written communications with you, is that as a result of this project, 258 nights per year will be subjected to noise associated with events under the lights. And I want to address that with this chart. I have a laser pointer. I'm taking us back a decade or two. But I think it's the only way I could effectively do this with my lack of technological skills. Of those 258 events utilizing lights, 220 of them are practices. Practices that currently occur from 3:30 to 6:30. What we will do with the lights is shift those to go from 4 to 7. What that allows is sports that are in the winter, like lacrosse and soccer, that currently have a hard stop time when the sun goes down, to get that additional 45 minutes of practice in. There's no crowds, there's no PA, there's no cheering. It is a quiet event, and it will not have an impact on our neighbors. Once you get past those first 220, the next most impactful is soccer games. Soccer currently occurs from 3 to 6. With the lights, we can shift it to be 3 to 7. And amazingly, allowing that additional hour to occur there keeps our soccer players in class. They no longer have to miss 7th period every time they have a game because they don't have to get out before school ends to loosen up to start the game the second the school ends. They can stay in class, see the day through, and then go start their game. And it's just that 1 hour. And I might also mention that soccer does not use a PA. It doesn't have a band, and typically its crowds are not very big. Moving on from that, we get to lacrosse. Lacrosse, 10 regular season games, currently going from 3 to 6, and this would shift those games to 5 to 9. That is the latest event that is not football, 9 p.m. for lacrosse. Again, the attendance numbers are far below what you see at a football game. There is not a band. There is not a large cheering section. They do use the amp and the PA system, but it is not a play-by-play. So what are we really talking about here tonight? The impacts associated with this project? It's football. Football is currently played on Saturday from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., and we're requesting to be able to shift that to Friday nights from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. There are 5 home football games a year. 5. On average, they have a crowd of about 800 to 1,000. And we anticipate that with the lights, that could increase because people are excited about Friday nights under the lights. It's kind of a big deal in the region, and we think that attendance will increase, particularly amongst our students, which we see as a benefit of this project. In addition to that, if the team has a great season, we get a home playoff game, maybe 2 home playoff games. Heck, if we have 3 home playoff games, it's an amazing season. 8 nights. 8 nights a year that are going to be impacted by the lights. And we recognize that that is something that needs to be addressed and that is being addressed through the protocols, but it is certainly not 258 nights a year. And as you can see, the playoff games is when it's most impactful. That's when the crowd will be 2,000 to 3,000. And it is something that needs to be managed and managed well. I'm happy to tell you that in the fall, when we had temporary lights, we had an attendance of approximately 2,800. And we managed all of the parking on site except for American River Drive. We managed to get people in and out of the facility effectively. It was a safe and fun environment for teenagers that otherwise would be sitting at home playing on their phones, maybe recording TikTok. We got each other out here and we got to have a great night. And not just the students, but their families and the community as a whole. So I'd really like to get to the 4 issues I think that Ms. Gutierrez pointed out as really the key issues that we heard repeatedly from the community. 1, light and glare, followed by pedestrian safety, parking management, and event noise. The first, light and glare, these are LED lights, pinpoint accuracy onto the field. What our lighting analysis says is, honestly, there's no light spillage outside of the track. This doesn't even go beyond the stadium itself, and it certainly doesn't get to the property line. And the analysis in the environmental document says there's no light and glare into neighboring yards. It also is worth noting that the Musco lights that we intend to install are dark night certified, which more or less means they are the best technology on the market. I'm not sure where to point this. The next one is on the issue of safety. Safety when it comes to people attending the games, as well as the safety of the surrounding community. As the protocol documents indicate, we have dozens of parent support that volunteer at the games to make sure that students are behaving appropriately, coming in and out in an effective manner, crossing the street where they're supposed to cross. We also are required to have 4 off-duty sheriff officers on site for the games, making sure that this is truly a safe environment where you would feel comfortable having your kid. In addition to that, there was concern that because we're now shifting games till after dark, there might be safety with people crossing the road. If your parent is picking you up on American River Drive after the game, you'd have students crossing a street now at dark. So we are required to install a crosswalk at Tennyson and American River Drive that has the button where you push it and it lights up so that cars can clearly see people are crossing the street and they can safely get across. Through this process, we also learned that Jacob Lane and American River Drive, which is a 4-way stop, though cars are required to stop there, has no crosswalks. So we'll also be installing the crosswalks at that location so that it's clear that pedestrians have the right-of-way. Parking management. These are some pictures of the night of our 2 games that we held this last fall. Jesuit, as part of the protocols, 1, puts out these A-frame signs in advance of the game, letting neighborhood know we're having a game this Friday night. Be prepared that the game is coming. Then the night of the game puts out signs that says, please respect our neighbors. Jesuit event parking on campus. And we're waving people on campus. Waving people to the campus and saying, this is where you need to park. I believe it's also a condition of approval 19, saying that we need to continue this practice through and through. And actually, there's a permit, I guess, that we can get from the county that actually allows us to say no parking, which previously we were told we couldn't say. Either way, encouraging or telling them specifically no, it worked. We were incredibly impressed with the outcome here. Neighborhoods were not being flooded. Tennyson did not have cars parked at. Piccadilly did not have cars parked at. Jacob did not have cars parked on it. People listened to the request, and they did what they were asked to do, and it was a success. And again, that's with 2,800 attendees. Lastly, noise. Ballard Acoustic did the noise analysis. Paul Ballard is here in the audience tonight. Paul set up his noise monitors at 6 locations around the campus to see what the noise impact of football games was going to be. Turns out the weekend he set up was also the air show at Mather Air Force Base. So he recorded one football game, but we got some real strange sounds as planes were flying over. So he left the equipment out there all week long, recorded the noise associated with all of the practices, all of the day-to-day activity, and then caught the football game the following weekend as well. So we have noise analysis from 2 football games and everything that occurs in between. What that analysis came back and told us is that noise is actually not above the county noise limits most of the time. And I say most of the time. There are a few times in every game where there's a loud spike of noise. And I bet you can all guess what it is, but it's when Jesuit scores a touchdown and the announcer says, "Touchdown!" and the crowd erupts and the band plays and everybody screams for about 8 to 10 seconds. And then it's quiet again. And we go back to an appropriate level that is within the county noise standards. But despite that, we have agreed to and had a mitigation measure imposed upon us that requires Jesuit, before it ever utilizes the lights, to go out and dial in the PA to assure that we're meeting the county's noise standard at all property lines so that neighbors are not being subjected to noise associated with that PA. The assumption is that will result in a 3 decibel reduction in the existing noise that they're experiencing, which 3 decibels is kind of a magic number in noise analysis. It's when that noise change becomes perceptible. The average person can actually hear it and say, hey, that's quieter. That's noticeably quieter. And that's what this is intended to achieve. I believe also the question was asked for more detail about the condition of approval that allows for reconfiguration in the future of the speakers if need be. In 2018, the use permit that you are amending today was very specific. Thou shalt have 4 speakers located at this specific height, pointed at this exact direction, and it is very prescriptive. We, as part of this amendment, will reinstall those exact same speakers at those same heights pointed the same way. But what we didn't want to do is preclude Jesuit from improving, which is part of the Jesuit way of doing things. If there is a better way to do this, and we can do it in a feasible manner, we want to be able to pursue that without having to come back through for a whole new hearing on a use permit. If we can find technology that allows us to still have the fans hear the PA and not have to have it be those 4 speakers, reduce the overall impact on the neighbors, we want the flexibility to be able to do that. Obviously, with the checks and balances of having to bring it to the county, having the county analyze noise analysis and say that that works, but not being so prescriptive that we can't actually improve the situation if, in fact, that technology is available and within the budget. So that's why that condition is being asked to modify that condition. So lastly, I would just like to close with, this has been a long process for Jesuit. There has been a lot of outreach and a lot of discussion with the neighbors. We have heard comments and done what we believe is everything that we could do feasibly to try and address the concerns to the greatest extent possible, while also not giving up this effort, because we believe that these lights are warranted. We believe they are truly in the benefit of the Carmichael and Arden Arcade communities, in the health and safety interests of the students that play here and the families that enjoy this on a Friday night, and that this is going to be a great thing, not only for Jesuit and its students, but for Sacramento County as a whole, for the other teams that no longer have to come here on Saturdays, but can play all of their games Friday under the lights. And with that, I'm happy to answer questions. I'd also say, we have the athletic director here who can answer any questions you may have about athletics, as well as the campus president and principal if you have questions about school programs themselves.
Thank you, Mr. Kiesling. Questions for the applicant this evening? Commissioner Conklin?
Thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation and the time. You had mentioned, I have a couple questions here, so bear with me. You had mentioned the protocols document. Could you walk me through how that document came to be? Was it offered to the community? Was there any integrated changes to that protocol document that reflects community input?
Certainly. So Jesuit has protocols for all events that they already had a document they started with, right? But again, those have all been tailored to daytime events because we've never had nighttime events. After our first or second Good Neighbor meeting since the CPAC meeting in 2022, we received quite a bit of comment from the neighbors, and we decided it made sense to look at protocols that address specific concerns of the neighborhood when it comes to nighttime events and hosting nighttime events. What we need to do as a campus is different than what we typically do for daytime events. And so that's where this document came from. It actually was a result of hearing conversations with the neighbors and realizing we needed to tweak the way we do things to address those concerns. After that was done, we submitted it to the county. The county was receptive, gave us feedback, also informed us that if we were committed to this, that they wanted to make sure it was binding upon us as a condition of approval, which Jesuit agreed to. The county then made it publicly available to many of the neighbors, any neighbor that asked for it. It was made publicly available to them. And in fact, the county received comments from several neighbors on the document itself, which we then asked for a copy of. We took those comments and incorporated a vast number of changes that came from the neighbors actually into the protocol document itself. So what you see today before you is not what we started with. It's really been an iterative process and incorporates changes from both the county and the neighbors.
Thank you. Some of the residents I've spoken to have asked for dimming of the lights at certain time thresholds at the end of a game. Could you speak to what the protocol says and what Jesuit plans to, protocols to follow through pending the approval of this application?
Certainly. So the lights are necessary during the games themselves, but as soon as the game concludes, the lights immediately drop to 50%. 50%. 50% is what they stay at while we have people both cleaning up and exiting. I believe our experience was that took about 15 to 20 minutes, and as soon as that is complete, the lights go off. So again, for a football game, the way football games are currently scheduled, and that time is dictated to us by CIF. It depends on what league you're in, but that tells you what time varsity games have to start. The way in their current league is they are scheduled to end by 9:45. The hope is that we can have the lights all the way off by 10 or slightly after 10. Now, obviously, football has injuries, and it has stoppage time, and it has penalties. So games could go till 10. With an overtime, it might go to 10:15. But in no case would we ever have full bright lights going until 11 o'clock at night. And again, the commitment would be as soon as a game ends, those lights are immediately dimmed.
And one of the other questions that I didn't have answered, but I know that some residents were concerned about the involvement that Jesuit High School has with the community, specifically the Will Hagen and Del Deo Homeowners Association. Can you speak to what that involvement is, if any?
I would like to defer on that if I could, only because I'm not sure of what Jesuit's involvement is with the Homeowners Association. I do know that we have attended Homeowners Association meetings at which they were talking about this project, but I'm not sure. We're not members of the Homeowners Association.
We are members of the Will Hagen.
Come on up and talk into the microphone for me, please.
Chris Alling, I'm the president at Jesuit. I'm sworn. Thank you, Chair Rathel. We are members of that neighborhood association. We do host their annual meeting once, if not twice a year. That's it.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate you bridging that informational gap.
If you could hold your comments, we're going to have public comment here in a little bit.
That's all I have. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Commissioner Corona Savignano, questions for the applicant? Commissioner Borja, questions for the applicant?
Yes, thank you for the presentation. We had received some questions regarding the use case that was selected in the EIR and an environmental impact report. I was wondering if you could share with us why that specific use case was used by Jesuit in consideration in drafting the environmental report, and what was the outcome of that use case?
Certainly. I believe you're referring to the Carmel High School installation of lights. We did look at that EIR prior to this one. Quite frankly, not a lot of school projects do full-blown EIRs, but that is a school that was in a predominantly residential neighborhood. It was one where the lights were rather contentious, and they did a full EIR and litigated it through the appellate court. So we said, we have a great example of what another similarly situated school has looked at, what they analyzed, what assumptions were made, and what did a court consider and weigh when it was looking at that case, which eventually had its EIR upheld. And part of that was to make sure we had assumptions like, how much is our attendance going to increase, right? What is the anticipated ridership? How many people are coming per vehicle when they come and attend our games? And so it was useful to see what assumptions have been made in other places in order for us to have a greater level of confidence in making the assumptions we made.
Commissioner Devlin.
Thank you. Could you maybe speak a little bit to, I think I heard you mention that you had kind of considered maybe some of the feedbacks that the neighbors have expressed, and maybe specifically to well, the parking and the traffic pieces.
Certainly.
Yeah, could you speak a little bit to that?
Sure. So I'll give two examples and let me know if you want more. But one at the original meetings, one of the biggest concerns we heard was overflow parking that flows out, in particular to the surrounding residential streets, Tennyson, Marlboro, Jacob, Piccadilly, right? We have adequate parking on site, but I think people would show up and they'd say, we're running late. We don't want to wait for the line to get onto campus. Just pull over right here. Poke down the street and we'll just walk in, right? I think that's a common thing. People think that way. I park that way sometimes as well. But we heard from the neighbors that it was impacting them, that it was often cars were parked in front of their house. And in particular, during football games, cars were flooding onto the residential street, which made it hard for them to have people at their house and to be able to entertain at their own homes. So we came back and said, what can we do to help address that? And honestly, we don't have the ability to go and ticket people, but we thought, let's talk about outreach to our students ahead of time and to our students' families, requesting, if you plan to attend the game, park on campus. It is critically important that you park on campus. Not only that, come in from the Fair Oaks entrance, come through O'Donnell from the top and park in the campus parking lot. So that communication was key, but also getting the signs out there in front of the neighboring streets with actually a warm human body. The effectiveness, honestly, I think even surprised us, but that was a direct response to what we heard from the neighbors, that our messaging alone wasn't taking care of it. And so we put a body out there, and it made a difference. It made a big difference. Another one that came directly from the neighbors, we had a neighbor show up and say, I live down Tennyson. I drive up Tennyson to American River Drive. I'm trying to pull out, and I can't see in either direction because all the cars are parked on American River Drive. Right? And I think that's creating a safety issue, particularly for kids that are darting out from behind those cars and going across the street. So we talked to the county, we looked at what options are, and if we put in, there's actually a fire hydrant there on the west side of Tennyson. If we can put in a crosswalk right there, it not only improves the safe crossing for the students, but also improves that line of sight for that driver who now has ability to look left and look right without seeing just cars in the way. And so they can safely exit. So again, that was something that directly came to us from a neighbor at a good neighbor meeting, and we immediately responded on how we can modify the project to address that.
And just one final question. Your noise survey, was that during the period of the temporary use lights? That was an evening game?
It was not. These were daytime football games, which were all we were authorized to do when the EIR was being created. However, once we were issued the temporary noise permits, we did have Ballard Acoustical come out and actually monitor the night games as well. And then he put in a supplemental report, which is in there, which more or less his conclusion, I won't put words into his mouth, but it's that what his findings from the night game mirrored the assumptions that he had made. So in his original report, he says, this is what I read at a daytime football game. This is what I saw. Assuming that the attendance goes up at a night football game and the ambient background noise level goes down, we can expect X amount of increase in the noise impact to the neighbors. And then when he went out there and was able to actually record it in a night game, what he recorded solidified his assumptions from his original report.
Great, thank you.
The staff recommended striking evening from condition 10 and striking condition number 12 completely. Would you guys be amenable to those changes?
The applicant would be comfortable with both of those.
Okay. And are you comfortable with all of the other conditions of approval that the staff is recommending?
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about the CIF requirements in condition 14 and 15 and why football is called out as something different than other sports? Is that I'm just trying to get to the bottom of that, if there's a league requirement that was mentioned. Of when I look at high school football games, they seem to all start at the same time throughout the region. So,
Yes. So high school sports are governed by the CIF. They sort of dictate what sports are played on what days, what times their games start, what times their games end. Because Jesuit doesn't have stadium lights, we play on Saturday days at the time that's specified. If you have a Friday night lights, I just had this texted to me because I honestly didn't know this answer. CIF dictates that our varsity games start at 7:15. So high school football games, typically 2.5 hours. They start at 7:15. They should be done by 9:45.
could you talk a little bit about the renderings versus the difference in pictures that were sent in? Were those temporary lights that were tested, were they LED?
The temporary lights that were tested? No. In fact, this picture here is with our temporary lights that were brought in. They were on a boom. They are not the same technology as Musco that we are intending to put in. You can see here even that there was not much spillage outside of the stadium itself. But no, the technology that we are seeking the approval to put in greatly exceeds that we had at our temporary event.
And then I asked staff about it, but I'm just going to allow you to, or maybe give us a little more information. Condition number 11 calls out PAL football, PAL track, and then the junior Marauders as daytime use only. Could you talk about why that is?
Certainly. So the Parochial Athletic League, PAL, does football. There's also a flag football league. There's a track league, as well as Jesuit Junior Marauders. These are youth leagues. These are developmental leagues. And so their games are held during the daytime. I think the nuance that you might be thinking of is Junior Marauders has historically practiced 3 days a week at Jesuit, and during the fall, I think the month of October, and September, late September and into October, they've historically used temporary lights around dusk. That's just practices. Their games all are dictated by those organizations, that the youth games are during the daytime hours.
So there wouldn't be any desire to use those, the stadium lights for those events?
Honestly, with Jesuit's own athletics and its own sports, they will predominantly be using the stadium at the same time. Junior Marauders is done in the southeast corner of the campus. There's just a little grass field out there, but the stadium itself will be utilized for Jesuits practices and Jesuits events.
Okay. The last question is maybe a technical question, is if you put a delimiter on there, and it has the ability to adjust the PA system down to 70 decibels. What happens when the crowd cheers really loud, or the band plays really loud at a touchdown? Does that mean that the PA system is basically cut off? I'm just trying to figure out, can the delimiter distinguish between like crowd noise and PA noise? How does it handle that?
So the limiter on the PA, from my understanding, means if you're speaking through it, if you're whispering or you're yelling, it's going to come out at the same volume. So historically, the way the announcer has done it is he talks through the game and says, who the players are, who the pass is to, but then when it's a touchdown, he goes, touchdown! It's much louder. The limiter makes sure that when it comes out of the speakers, it's coming out at the same volume as the rest of it. It's not allowing for the variation based upon how loud the person is speaking. That's my understanding. But we cannot regulate crowd noise. There is no way to put a limiter on our band and on the tuba and on the trumpet, right? There's no way to tell a kid to scream quieter. That is going to still occur. So we can regulate and are regulating now the PA, and the PA will be set to limit. But again, that's why noise is still a significant and unavoidable impact in your EIR, because there's a recognition, while some things are within our control, crowd excitement and enthusiasm is not something we can nor necessarily do we want to regulate. That's part of the fun of being at a football game.
Thank you for clarifying. Other questions for the applicant? All right. Thank you, Mr. Keesling. All right. At this time, we're going to go ahead and move on to public comment. I have a large stack of public comment. Oh,
And can I
Yes.
recommend, we do have one person in the phone comment queue, and they've been here since the beginning, and there's only one caller. Can I recommend that we take them first and maybe close the comment queue?
sounds good.
Okay, thank you. Please send,
Yeah, can I make a few comments before we do
Yes,
that?
sir.
Okay. I wanted to make a few things. Right now, based on my estimation, we have about 90 minutes, maybe a little more than that, of public comment if we have 2 minutes apiece. So if you have a new public comment, we want to encourage you guys all to participate and participate in the public comment process. But if you are in support and don't have anything necessarily new to add to that, you can always just say, hey, I'm in support of the project. Or if you're in opposition to the project, you can say, I'm in opposition to the project for this, and this reason. It would just help us move through the public comment a little quicker this evening. But you're definitely always welcome to use your full 2 minutes if you would like. I would like to encourage you to keep it civil also. I know some people are probably going to get up here and say some things you do not agree with. That is part of the process. We encourage that in this democratic environment. And so please do not groan, make comments, yell out to be heard. I don't want to have to ask anybody to be removed from the room for being disrespectful to other commenters. We want to be able to hear everybody that wants to speak this evening. I also want to encourage you to address the commission this evening. The staff is over here. They're here to help. We will, after the end of public comment, we will allow the applicant to rebut public comments. We'll also ask the staff to chime in on anything we need staff clarification on. But please don't crowd up here next to the staff. This is a public meeting. We want to be able to hear everything and get everything on record that is said this evening. Thank you so much for coming down this evening. We're going to start with a telephonic comment this evening, and then we'll move on to the in-person comments.
okay, please send the telephone caller. Hello, caller, you're now in the meeting. Please start with your comment.
Hi, thank you. My name is Julie Gable, and I'm a homeowner and community member that is north of Jesuit in Sacramento, and I have been sworn. I am strongly opposed to this project, and I see it both as a lighting and amplified sound project, obviously because of the changes with amplified sound. I also want to raise serious concern with both the scope of the EIR, the analysis and lack of and then also the outreach for neighbors such as myself and others that are in Sacramento. I know in a past meeting that it was said an email was sent to the Arden Arcade Planning Advisory Commission, but that is not the same as the outreach that was done for Carmichael. And the 52-acre campus that Jesuit is made up of has multiple parcels. The athletic field in the Sacramento County Assessor's map is a 95864 Sacramento, California address. The location of the main entrance, which the applicant was saying they encouraged some of their community to park in Fair Oaks and O'Donnell, is also a Sacramento County address. So, and even if you looked at the maps and materials, everybody was talking about stuff to the south, to the east, maybe a bit to the west, but it is missing a huge portion of people that will be impacted. We can hear this campus today, and the increase of noise and light pollution is quite concerning. It would be permanent for neighbors such as myself and others. I also believe that the outreach needs to extend well beyond 1,500 because it already goes past that today. So I think that my ask of, and I believe the county is not in position to approve this today, is that you not approve and certify the EIR. I ask that you deny the permit tonight or at least not approve it, and you need to go back to and recirculate this and go through a process that's inclusive of homeowners that are in Sacramento in addition to Carmichael, because the campus sits in both areas. Jesuit acknowledges that. Their directions of where they send people come from both of those areas, from parking to...
Thank you, Ms. Gable. If you could please conclude your comments.
Yes, yeah. And I thank you very much for the impacts. These are permanent, lasting impacts for the homeowners. And while we want, kids and communities that
Thank you, Ms. Gable.
Okay. And Chair, we did have two phone calls that snuck through the system. There is a little bit of a delay, but we do have two callers in the queue. If we could.
No problem. Send them through.
Okay. Thank you. Hi, caller. You're now in the meeting. Please start with your comment.
Hi, good evening. My name is Sean Moore, and I have been sworn. I live directly across from Jesuit on American River Drive, and I'd like to address condition number 11. To be honest, I'm not necessarily opposed to 5 Friday night football games or Jesuit events going on there. But the issue that I don't know that's been adequately addressed is the issue of the non-Jesuit events and the impact that they have on the community. If you were to come to my house during the summer and try to come over for dinner or something when Jesuit Marauders are going on, you're probably going to have to park 3 or 4 blocks away. And there is traffic for those practices because the parents are all here, and the comings and goings, frankly, are a little bit crazy. We actually expanded our driveway so that if our family comes over, they'll have a place to park. And the people who come do not recognize that that is part of my driveway, and they park there as well. And so I'd like to just draw your attention to condition number 11 to the extent that that can be more adequately addressed, if there were a possibility to limit or change the way that happens so that during the summer, and actually when we moved in during a PAL track event, there was no place for the moving truck to park because everybody was parked around our house. And when we moved in, I expected that there would be Jesuit events. It would have been crazy for me not to expect that. It was the additional activity that was not expected, and frankly, in my mind, has the greatest impact on us enjoying use of our property, especially during the Jesuit Marauders time. So I thank you for your time and thank you for your consideration. That's all I have.
Please send the next caller. Hello, caller. Please start with your comment.
Okay, thank you. I am a resident on Piccadilly Circle and just want to make a couple statements to the council. When they did the 2 nights with the boom lighting, the lighting was going over our street into the surrounding neighborhood, illuminating people's houses to the point where it looked like the helicopter from the sheriff was going to do a raid. It was extremely intrusive into our neighborhood. I'm in support of the project. I'm an alumni of the school. My concern is I'd prefer to have the access to the school and the stadium limited to the Fair Oaks entrance and not American River Drive. Several of my community members over here, we would like the gates to be shut on American River Drive to limit that access. I understand that you guys want to put a signal crossing for pedestrians at Tennyson and Marlboro. I don't think that's going to help the situation. As a matter of fact, it might make it worse. The street lighting on American River Drive is very limited, and at night may pose a safety risk, regardless if you have a pedestrian crossing at that intersection. The second is on the community outreach. Just want to make sure that we can actually call and talk to a human and not get a voice recording or voicemail and wait to be called back. And that's all I have.
Thank you. And do we have further public comments?
And that concludes our phone public comments.
All right. That brings up a couple of other points before we move on to in-person comments. Each speaker will be given 2 minutes tonight. If you could do your best to respect that 2 minutes, I sure would appreciate it. If not, I'll try to interrupt you and ask you to make your closing statement. So please respect everybody that's here to speak tonight by honoring that. And then second off, if you are here to speak on behalf of an organized group, you are allotted 5 minutes to address the commission. That's in our rules of procedure. So let us know if you are part of an organized group at the start, and we will adjust the time. So with that, we're going to move on to in-person public comments. We're going to start with Susan Myers this evening. And on deck is going to be Jim Doherty, followed by Margaret Sitalti. Now, I'll do your best to pronounce your names. I apologize in advance for not getting those right. Susan, the floor is yours.
Hello, my name is Susan, and I've been sworn in. My husband and I live about a quarter of a mile east of Jesuit. We've lived there for over 20 years. Every morning we sit in our backyard, sometimes in a sleeping bag with a heater on, to read our newspaper and watch the birds eat from our bird feeders. We get everything from finches, turtle doves, woodpeckers to wolves, owls, and birds of prey. When the PA system starts in the morning from Jesuit, every bird disappears. From our backyard, we can hear the morning announcements, graduation ceremonies, dances, and sporting events. The noise fills our backyard, and the birds disappear. I can sit in my living room and see all the people walk on our street days and nights. If I was to count, I'd say in excess of 20 to 30 people a day on average walk our street. In fact, there is one neighbor, Art, who will walk the street 2 to 3 times a day. I have another neighbor who tells me he walks his dog at 3 a.m. in the morning. 2 days ago on Saturday, I walked in the afternoon, and all I heard was a noise from Jesuit. Our neighborhood is a safe, quiet, and idyllic neighborhood. If a PA system is going every day and lights are added, those people will disappear just like the birds do. An idyllic nature of our neighborhood would be destroyed. I could be wrong on these numbers, but I've learned that only 10 to 15% of the student body and those student families actually live in our immediate neighborhood. That means that over 75% of the students and their families live outside our neighborhood. So why should they decide what happens in our neighborhood? We, the neighbors who live there, should be the ones participating in the decision of this project. And since the EIR and the permit amendment have not been complete in addressing all the issues and concerns of the neighbors, I ask that the EIR be not approved today and
Thank
the
you,
permit
Susan.
amended. Thank you.
All right, next up we've got Jim Doherty. Margaret Sitalti, you are on deck.
I'm Jim Doherty. I've been sworn. I live on Marlboro Way near the intersection of Tennyson Way. I have one request in regards to some attachments that were part of the plan called Findings and Conditions of Approval. On page 9, item 16, they refer to posting of no event parking signs. I'd like to be added to the 4th location and include Tennyson and Marlboro Way intersection. So there's 2 signs there. What happens is people pull off of American River Drive, proceed down Tennyson Way, and then they either turn left or right onto Marlboro, and that's where they park. This kind of creates another whole issue because you have nighttime events and you're going to have unsupervised young people parking in the neighborhood. Next, a real quick old Norwegian saying, no matter how many times the carpenter cuts the 2x4 lumber, it's still too short. I believe the county is taking a piecemeal approach to studying and debating this important quality of life issue affecting hundreds of county taxpayers. Here's why. Carmichael Old Foothill Farm CPAC limited the notification process to 1,500-foot radius of the stadium. But this stadium amendment has a major negative impact on many residents that live far beyond 1,500 feet and into an adjoining CPAC called Arden. No CPAC or county department was able to reach all of those taxpayers in the Arden CPAC area. Sadly, the CPAC borderlines result in disparate treatment of residents in the same Del Deo and Wilhagen neighborhood. They were denied their notification and due process. How can we correct this piecemeal approach? That completes my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Margaret, you're up. Trina Hugendijk, you're on deck.
Hello, everybody. My name is Margaret Sitauti, and I'm a Jesuit mom. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak. I told Miss Ophelia back there to put my paper last so I can speak last, but I guess it's my turn. I asked my 15-year-old last week, son, I will be speaking in front of the commissioner and asking for Jesuit's light. What would you like? What would you say if you were speaking on my behalf, on behalf of Jesuit? My 15-year-old kind of paused for 2 seconds. Then he said, Mom, I would say there will always be a possibility of something going wrong, but there's more positive and goodness out of the light. How I got an answer from my son, I took him to Carolina for some steak fries to make sure I get a reply from him. I just want to say I'm sorry to any family member or to the neighbors. I wish I can help out. I don't mind installing installing window treatments or soundproof the wall to give Jesuit a chance. But I will share my experience at Jesuit. I volunteer for over 500 hours at Jesuit, and it only requires 24 hours. Why? Because I want to say thank you. Every time I volunteer, from Director Hank, Director Jerry for safety, all the parents, even when it's time when there's nobody to show up to volunteer, the president, the CFO, the staff comes together to help out, to volunteer. Plus, bringing in security, bringing in family to make sure that the neighborhood is safe, that nobody parks on American River. I can still remember Dr. Woods telling us on the first day of freshman year, do not make U-turn, do not park on this street, do not park on that street.
Thank you,
and
Ms.
it was just
Sitauti.
not one time, the whole year.
Thank
As
you.
a sophomore mom, thank you very much for your time. Give us the light, please. Thank you.
All right, we've got Trina up, Chris Lee on deck.
Hi, my name is Trina Hogendijk, and I have been sworn. I hold a special place because I'm a parent, but I'm also a neighbor. So I see the value in the lights, and I would like to see the project approved. I wanted to share a letter from another neighbor that lives off of Wellworth Lane. He said, sharing a direct boundary with the Jesuit High School rugby field. As a close neighbor and an active participant in our local community, I am writing to express my strong support for the proposed installation of stadium lights at the Jesuit High School football field. My son, Antonio, a passionate participant in Next Level Football League, hosted by Jesuit High School, and a student at Del Deo, is deeply influenced and inspired by the athletic culture and the triumphant spirit of Jesuit. He, like many others in our community, finds a sense of belonging and purpose in the camaraderie and discipline instilled by sports. Over the years, I have observed and participated in conversations about the role of sports in our community. As a mental strength and performance coach that works with artists in professional sports, I have seen firsthand the lifelong impact of high school sports on individuals. These formative experiences under the Friday night lights do not merely serve as entertainment. They foster a sense of community, encourage healthy lifestyles, and provide essential life lessons in teamwork, resilience, and leadership. The installation of stadium lights represents more than a physical enhancement of the facility. It symbolizes a commitment to our youth and our community. The opportunity to host games on Friday night under the lights offers a unifying venue for the community and an inspiring platform for our young athletes. It combats the current epidemic of loneliness and isolation by providing a safe and engaging environment where families and friends can gather, support one another, and celebrate the achievements of our young people. I understand that change can often be met with resistance grounded in tradition or concerns about the unknown. However, I firmly believe that in this case, the benefits far outweigh any potential drawbacks. As someone who lives in close proximity to the proposed changes, I can assure you that the impact of our neighborhood is a positive one. Please, I'm giving you my support. I share the sentiments of this letter. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hugendyk. Chris is up. Craig Johns, you are on deck.
Good evening. My name is Chris Lee, and I have been sworn. I'm a parent. I'm a senior parent at Jesuit High School. I'm also a football coach at Jesuit High School. I want to talk about number 2 that was in the presentation about health and safety and heat exhaustion and heat illness and nausea and cramping. It's a much higher rate on those Saturday afternoon games when you're coaching these student athletes as opposed to the nice evening on Friday evening. That's something that we really need to pay attention to about the health and safety of our student athletes. Saturdays in the realm of football are for recovery, homework, studying, and when you lose that day to be able to do that, you're digging into the student athletes not having that extra day for studying and getting prepared for Monday morning and with things of that nature that are going on. SAT testing is also a big thing for all students, and it's not easy. It's hard enough getting it scheduled around certain things because there are only certain days, certain weekends, certain test places. We have student athletes that literally have to get up 7 in the morning, go take an SAT test, probably ends, I don't know, around 11 or 12, and then flip their minds right into a football game. Those are the little things that aren't seen when they have to be the only school in the region playing on Saturday afternoons. If you follow high school football, you know college recruiting is getting more and more difficult. Our student athletes, when they're all the other student athletes from other schools are around taking game day visits to colleges, to talk to coaches, meet coaches, see how the game days actually work in college so they can make an educated choice of where they want to go play. They can't go on those trips. They always have to say no because they're kicking off at 1 p.m. on Saturdays. There are a lot of things for student athletes that are not seen in this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. All right, Craig, you're up. On deck, we've got Charles Garcia.
Good evening. My name is Craig Johns, and I have been sworn. I'm here tonight speaking in support of the project on behalf of myself, my wife, who's in the audience, and my son, Jackson, who's a sophomore at Jesuit High School this year. We have attended several of the neighborhood meetings held at Jesuit on the topic over the past few years, and we have read the opposition letters on the project. Although we don't live near Jesuit, we do live 516 yards away from a large high school that has almost 4,000 students, about 4 times the size of the student population at Jesuit. As one might expect with an on-campus population this large, the high school near our home is just about like a junior college with multiple lighted fields for year-round and evening football, soccer, and rugby games. Every day, we experience the peak hour traffic to and from school on our local single-lane roadways, and we hear the sounds coming from the school during band practice, football games, swim or water polo meets, and school dances, just like many neighbors of Jesuit and almost every other high school that you might think of. But it doesn't bother us one bit, because we know that the peak traffic only lasts between 15 and 20 minutes during school arrival and departure times or from the various events. We know that the music will subside after band practice or when the dances are complete, and we know that the intermittent cheers will end when the game, match, or meet are over. We relish the sounds of the cheering when a team scores a touchdown or a goal. We delight in hearing the activity at school, knowing that teenagers have the opportunity to engage in life instead of sitting at home alone, steeped on their electronic screens. We know that the sounds coming from the high school that we live next to are the sounds of students, friends, families, and the community all participating in wholesome activities together and in a safe place. We respectfully urge you to recommend approval of this long-awaited and well-conceived lighting project for the Jesuit football stadium. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. All right, Charles, you're up. On deck, we have Jennifer Hall.
Thank you. I'm Charles Garcia, and I have been sworn. I am a resident of the Will Hagen area. I also have 2 boys, a junior and a freshman at Jesuit. One of my big concerns that I have in support of this was item number 2, which was the health and safety. I volunteer quite a bit on the game days on those Saturdays, and the field gets very hot. I was actually working on the field when we had that opposing coach collapse from the heat, where we had to rush and get him into a cold bath on the field there to cool him down. Very scary. My parents, who are in their 70s, also know that they can't attend the early games in the first half of the season because it is too hot. When we were freshmen, we first came to our first game, we had no idea the heat that was involved, and they had to leave. And they know anything over 80 degrees, it's too hot. That it radiates off those bleachers to a point where it's not bearable and it's not safe for an older adult. So my boys don't get to have their grandparents show up to those games, see the hard work that they put in throughout the week, come to fruition on the game, because it's just frankly too hot on Saturday afternoons. So for that, I'm highly in support of having lights, and I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. All right, Jennifer, you are up, and on deck, we've got Elizabeth Hughes.
My name is Jennifer Hall. I have been sworn. I am a resident of 4884 Kipling Drive within the affected neighborhood. I will not have any vested interest in the lights in future years other than my personal perspective that I think it's the right thing to do for this neighborhood. There's no question that we're seeing a change in weather with hotter and longer days. This change is precluding us from events that we used to enjoy just a few years ago, like being able to watch a football game in the late afternoon. My oldest son, Jake, graduated from Jesuit in 2021. His last game in a shortened COVID season was in late spring. My mom and dad were sitting in the stands, but they didn't get to watch the end of the game because my dad was overcome by heat. The intensity of those sun on those bleachers and that day in April precluded it. We'll never get that moment back. And that noise to the day which has been flagged as a disruption, well, that noise is also the sound of Jake being recognized as he concluded his Jesuit career as a two-year varsity captain. It was the sound of my deceased husband's name being read and being able to be recognized as being with us in spirit that day on that field. This year, my son Caleb, a senior, was getting ready for his final Jesuit season. We were so excited when we saw there'd be an opportunity for a night game. This meant my mom and dad could watch him without worrying about the heat. We are so grateful that they are able to safely attend. It was a special moment which we cherish. As I was reflecting on this evening and the decision in front of you, I thought about the impact of Jesuits specifically and our schools to our communities at large. We are all aware of the undeniable benefits of schools provide to the community, and with those benefits come impacts like the ones we're talking about today. Examples have been shared, both positive and negative. Some of the impacts new lights can provide can be seen through the experience of Hiram Johnson High School, which recently got lights on their football field. Reporting from local news station all highlighted the positive effects the lights have had on the surrounding community. For Hiram Johnson, it's described as a benefit to the community, a way to highlight the investment being made. It strikes me as disingenuous in what has been said about the lights at Jesuit, that the school is bringing in disruptions and driving down home values when that isn't what's said about Hiram Johnson. I think approving the lights in this situation is an example of equity. I believe the equitable solution is to have many schools share the hosting of evening events so the impact is shared and spread rather than being the burden of a few schools in someone else's neighborhood so we can enjoy the quiet in ours. I think there's some latitude that can be given to Jesuit to adhere to the guidance provided by this committee. I know if we look back at Jesuit's history of complying with county planning requirements, that they have done an exceptional job. I look back at the requests and requirements from the traffic light installation, and they've adhered to every single one. And also, there's been no deaths at Gordon Lane since the traffic light was put in. With the proper precautions in place for listening to neighbors, being respectful to the surrounding community, and providing an anchor, I strongly recommend the support of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. All right, next up we've got Elizabeth and Kelly Hughes. You're on deck.
Hello, I'm Elizabeth Hughes, 844 Piccadilly Circle, Sacramento. I have been sworn and I oppose this project. We have deep concerns regarding the proposed project by a $35 million a year business seeking approval in our residential neighborhood. As responsible stewards of our community's well-being, I urge you to oppose the following for the 6 compelling reasons. Number 1, financial disparities. The applicant operates as a nonprofit in our residential neighborhood, evading property taxes. This unfairly burdens the neighborhood, effectively subsidizing the applicant's operations. They are also not a paying member of the association. Unavoidable noise pollution. The applicant's project introduces significant and unavoidable noise disturbances, infringing upon the peace and tranquility of our residential area. While the statement of overriding considerations may attempt to justify these adverse environmental impacts, it's crucial to recognize the neighborhood gains no social, economic, legal, technical, or any other benefits in return. Number 3, unwanted project. Contrary to the applicant's assertions that the project is needed, we know it is desired. It is not a needed project, and it lacks tangible benefits to our neighborhood, rendering it a disruption without purpose. Number 4, resistance to compromise. Regrettably, the applicant has been unwilling to compromise on mitigating noise impacts. This unyielding stance raises serious concerns about the applicant's commitment to being a responsible and considerate community member. Number 5, discretionary decision-making. As members of the Planning Commission, you are responsible for balancing the interests of residents and developers. In this case, the overwhelming opposition from the surrounding neighborhood should be paramount. Number 6, lack of neighborhood benefits. The critical question arises, why should the desire of a large business be given more consideration than the needs and desires of the neighborhood tax-paying constituents? The proposed project forces our community to accommodate a business expansion with significant adverse impacts without tangible benefits. This is an unjust and untenable situation for the residents who deserve your protection. I implore you to strengthen the conditions of approval and demand specific mitigation measures, project limitations, and compliance specifics. Please envision the impact on a community held captive to a disruptive practice they did not choose and cannot escape. When I said strengthen the conditions of approval, you probably have in your hands a copy of some of those changes that are suggested. Most of the conditions are quite vague and don't specify exactly what the limitations are in terms of noise. They do not specify that high school events are Jesuit high school events. And there are additional changes that even back in 1992, where the applicant was supposed to regularly mail to the surrounding area some notices, they only have a website. So mailing is not the adequate equivalent of a website information. I will say for this particular project, for the lighting project, Condition 8 identifies outdoor events with amplified sound may only occur between 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. If a night football game goes into overtime, the volume of the amplified sound will be reduced. Well, it's not specific. How much is the reduction? Specify the volume of the amplified sound. And specify if a football game goes into overtime, what will be the reduction? Specify the output levels will be reduced and not just the input levels. And specify how the amplified sound will be monitored to ensure it does not exceed the allowable zoning limits. Condition 9, the utilization of the lights should be limited to high school athletic programs. Well, that should be specific to Jesuit high school athletic programs and events. Condition 17, for 3 years following the effective date of the use permit, the project proponent shall prepare an annual report, and it doesn't the condition should be enhanced to reflect annual monitoring reports for perpetuity rather than limiting their monitoring to 3 years. It should also specify in the annual report that decibel readings should be identified when they occurred or exceeded during any amplified sound event. The applicant should be held accountable for monitoring the amplified volume levels, output levels, and when levels were exceeded. And then condition 22, specify those decibel limits and how the applicant will reduce its PA systems and who determines what activities are prohibited or specified when, if the applicant
Thank you, Ms. Hughes.
Excuse me.
All right, we've got Kelly up next, followed by Caleb Hall.
Good evening. I'm Kelly Hughes. I've been sworn. I live at 844 Piccadilly Circle. I oppose Jesuit sports complex expansion. None of the people commenting in opposition to the lighting plan had an opportunity to comment on the PA before it was installed. CEQA was not satisfied. Only a small group of homes in Carmichael received a notice. People on the fence line with Jesuits football field live in the county and did not receive notification. At a recent CPAC meeting, Jesuit was asked about their research into modern PA systems that put the sound in the stadium seats where the spectators are, rather than broadcasting the game into neighborhood yards and living rooms. They evaded the question, but later stated the EIR says the sports complex noise cannot be mitigated, and we all know that isn't correct. PA technology was invented in the 1910s, consisting of a microphone, amplifier, and speakers on a pole. 100 plus years later, Jesuit is using that same technology. They spend a huge amount of time contracting for expensive stadium lighting that will please their alumni association, but apparently little time finding ways to mitigate their stadium noise. They insist they have the decibel level under control by limiting the volume knob with the amplifier. If you shout into a microphone, the volume coming out the speakers is significantly increased regardless of the amplifier knob position. Modern stadium noise control technology that puts the sound in the stadium seats where the spectators are is in use by schools and venues that care about the neighborhoods they impact. Bluetooth and Wi-Fi sound are also options. In addition to utilizing modern sound technology, sound walls can be installed between Jesuit and neighbors that share a fence line. Of course, there's no legal, safety, or climate change reason that compels Jesuit to use a PA system at all. Am I given time for the other two neighbors I'm representing?
No, are they here tonight? Well, only organized groups are given 5 minutes. So.
Okay. That's what I thought you gave Elizabeth.
Yes, Gaylord is here, and
He's given me his 2 minutes.
I'll give you some extra time. I know you guys have been very involved in this project, so please go ahead.
All right, thank you. Many of Jesuit students don't live local to the school. Many don't live in the county. Their families aren't disrupted by the noise generated from the sports complex. I and my neighbors pay around $8,000 a year in property taxes. Although Jesuit tuition is more than $18,500 per student and they have 1,000 plus students, Jesuit pays less than $400 per year in property taxes. People in the county that pay property taxes are subsidizing Jesuit High School and the student families that don't live here with infrastructure, fire, and police protection. The neighborhood doesn't benefit from having Jesuit here, and the negatives are felt by more than 200 households per our survey. We often hear, "You knew you were moving next to a school." That is a false logic and insulting. The school's been there since 1963 and going 53 years without the current PA system or stadium lights. Presumably, most of the students over the 53 years went on to live fulfilling lives without having had an angry neighborhood hearing their games broadcast into their homes and backyards. Jesuit changed. We did not. We still like schools and appreciate kids. We don't like a private business lowering the value of our hard-earned homes and stealing our rights while providing nothing positive in return. We also hear, "Your house doubled in value living next to Jesuit." The increase in homes value was region-wide due to population pressure to leave the Bay Area and other non-Jesuit reasons. That situation has changed now. Several homes on my street next to Jesuit took over a year to sell. You may think your home's Zillow price is real if you don't understand mortgage companies determine the value of your home by on-site appraisal. Our home was appraised and received a deduction because the appraiser was there during a Jesuit football game. Unfortunate for us, but it underlines the fact that Jesuit noise has real negative impacts on those living in the noise zone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. All right, Caleb, you're up, and CJ Lee, you're on deck.
Good evening. My name is Caleb Paul, and I have been sworn. I'm a senior at Jesuit High School, class of 2024. I'm also an offensive lineman on the varsity football team. And I grew up being around Jesuit my entire life. My dad was a coach and a teacher from 2000 to 2017. And so Jesuit and Jesuit football mean a lot to me and my family. And football's in my blood. I grew up being a ball boy on the sidelines for the football games and playing the Junior Marauders program for Jesuit. I couldn't wait to finally be on the varsity football team. As a kid, I loved watching Jesuit play in the Holy Bowl, one of their biggest games of the year, and that was always something that I had looked forward to playing in myself. And when we were preparing for our season last year and heard the news of the opportunity to play 2 games under the lights, I was filled with excitement. I looked forward to just those 2 games the entire summer. After playing those 2 games, and even though we lost the second one, those are 2 of my favorite Jesuit moments since being around Jesuit, which is 18 years. Being under the lights is an experience that I will never forget. I also live right down the street from Jesuit, right next to American River Drive and off of Jacob Lane. And I love being in this community with these neighbors, but I also understand that it is a responsibility to be respectful to my neighborhood. Being respectful to our neighbors is also something that the faculty and staff at Jesuit remind the students of daily. Jesuit students are aware of this responsibility. This is really important to the future of our school and community. And while I won't be able to enjoy it as a student since I will be graduating this year, I hope you consider how important this experience is to future Jesuit students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. All right, CJ, you are up, and on deck is Delvin Natali.
Good evening. My name is CJ Lee. I've been sworn in, class of 2024, and I played quarterback for the Marauders this year. Along with myself and other players on the team, we are blessed enough to have the opportunity to be a part of the college football recruiting process. Playing Saturday games mean missing out on college recruiting events and game day events. For example, this year, my dad and I could not schedule multiple recruiting trips because at the time we had games Saturday afternoon when the colleges would have the recruiting trips. Another con of playing Saturday afternoons are the inability to participate in recruiting trips, of course. It can limit players' chances engaging directly with coaches and certain coaches, and seeing facilities and experiencing the campus environment. With game days on Saturdays, it limits the ability of coaches coming to see you play. Leaving fewer opportunities for exposure can cause stress and impact players' performance on the game days. With all that being said, if Jesuit were to get lights, it would eliminate all these problems for players going through these college recruiting process as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. All right, Delvin, you're up, and Charlie Black, you're on deck.
Sorry. Good evening. My name is Delvin Ntale, and I've been sworn. I'm a senior, and I played football all 4 years at Jesuit. One of my favorite memories from this past senior year happened during our home opener under the lights. I was jogging back from the coin toss, and my eyes were locked in on the student section the entire time. I had the biggest smile on my face. I was excited by how many people had come out to see us play, and it was way more than the Saturday afternoon attendance I was accustomed to. I also cherish this moment because it's one of the biggest expressions of love and support I've received from the Jesuit community in my time here. As I reflect on this memory, I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you that every Jesuit field sport athlete deserves to know what this feels like. Teams perform better when they can feel the backing of their support system. Lights wouldn't only improve athletic programs, though. They would improve their student life overall. I've been attending Jesuit basketball games for the past 3 years, and I can confidently tell you that there's no better way for me to end my school weeks in winter than by cheering my lungs out for my classmates on the court. Usually, Jesuit students have to wait until the end of the first semester to experience home night athletic games. If our field had lights, they'd get to cheer at football games and take advantage of the social aspects that these events offer just after getting back to campus after summer break. It's clear to me that the installation of lights would truly benefit the entire student body. On behalf of athletes and supporters who attend Jesuit High School, I'm asking you to please consider turning on the lights. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Natale. Charlie, you are up, and I think it's Aaron Hempenstall is on deck.
Good evening. My name is Charlie Black, and I've been sworn. I am a senior at Jesuit High School, and I would like to begin by thanking the board and all of the members of our community for taking the time to be here today and considering the proposal to add lights to the football stadium at Jesuit High School. You've already heard the reasons why stadium lights are a necessary addition from the perspective of athletes and fans. I would like to provide reasoning from an academic perspective. I've played varsity soccer for 3 years now. Our games are played on the stadium field on Wednesdays and Fridays at 3 p.m. We have to begin right after school because otherwise we would run out of daylight and would not be able to finish our games. For every home game that we play, I and the rest of my team miss at least 1 hour of school for warm-ups and pregame preparation. Just this season, I missed a total of 15 hours of school as a result of this schedule. Additionally, my grade point average is 0.1 points lower during the season than it is during the fall and spring. The problem is worse for visiting teams. League games require visiting teams to miss 2 to 3 hours of school, and teams coming from Danville and Marin County leave their schools at 11 a.m. at the latest when they travel to play at Jesuit High School. As a person who holds myself to a very high academic standard, this is deeply concerning. It makes the balance between school and athletics even more difficult than it already is. Having lights on our stadium would completely resolve this issue. We would be able to begin home games at later times, which would allow us to attend all of our classes on game days. I firmly believe that adding lights to the stadium field at Jesuit High School would not only enhance the atmosphere for players and fans, but would greatly enhance the ability for future student athletes to be just that, a student athlete. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Black. All right. I think I have Aaron up next. I could be pronouncing that completely wrong. I've got Pat Troughton on deck.
Good evening. My name is Owen Hempenstall. It's Gaelic. It's tough. You're not the first. You won't be the last. I am sworn in, and I'm a senior at Jesuit. I'm on the executive council, and I was actually responsible for leading the cheering sections at the games earlier this school year, and I'm here as a representative of the student body. Well, I'm sure you've heard about the numerous health and safety benefits that the stadium lights will bring to Jesuit's campus. It will also be a colossal benefactor to community bonding, not only the Jesuit high school community, but to the communities of high schools all throughout the area. Jesuit sporting events have served as a community bonding event for decades, one of the most notable being the Holy Bowl, one of the most consistently and vastly attended high school sporting events in all of Northern California. These lights encourage attendance to not only Jesuit students and families who are beyond ecstatic about the notion of sporting events under the lights, but also to rival teams such as games against Rio Americano or support from our sister school, St. Francis, to come together and create for many more years of community pride and celebration of our amazing high school athletes. After a year of creating events for high school boys, trust me when I say that it is difficult to get that demographic excited about something. But these lights are the most unanimously supported idea of change on campus. This opinion is not only held by the Jesuit community, but many groups, such as aforementioned St. Francis and Rio, and countless other high schools throughout the area would feel the enormous benefits of this installation through supporting our athletes who deserve to play in humane conditions and well-supported events. These lights will not only be a service to our athletes, but to the greater Sacramento community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Owen Hempenstall. All right, we got Pat up next, and Craig Zero is on deck.
I'm Pat Troughton, and I've been sworn in.
Right there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Dear Sacramento Planning Commission, hello, I'm Pat Troughton, a resident of Regency Circle. I have lived in the area for 65 plus years. It's hard to believe as I look so young. But I am a witness to the growth and development of our neighborhood. I remember when Jesuit and Rio Americano high schools were first built. when Jacob Lane was only 300 feet long from Fair Oaks Boulevard, and American River Drive going east ended at Savern Drive. The schools were here before many of the developments ever existed. With growth and progress come changes that we must adopt to and become more harmonious with. It is for the good of our community. I understand the concerns of my neighbors. They worry about increased traffic and noise. When talking to our Sheriff Patrol, you will be told that 90% of all the traffic violations in our area are from people that live in our own neighborhood. It is not the responsibility of Jesuit High School to patrol our streets. One needs to call the CHP or sheriff to report problems in their neighborhoods. Overflow parking has been a recent problem in our neighborhoods, but really not from Jesuit. The reason for this increase is the enrollment of students at Reamericano High School. This is a neighborhood problem, not Jesuits. As far as the noise, a neighbor who lives on Regency Circle, who is for the lights at both schools, stated that through the years there has not been complaints during basketball season when at least 3 nights a week there are games. Traffic and parking has never been a problem. At the time I attended Reamericano, there were no girls' sports. Girls' sports are now available. This doubles the activity on Rio's campus for traffic and attendance. I don't know any reasonable person that thinks this is a bad idea. Also, security can be a problem. I believe that there is security at every Jesuit event on campus.
Thank you, Ms. Troughton. If you could make your closing comments.
If this is no longer true, I stand corrected. We are fortunate enough to live in an area with 2 excellent schools, high home values, and low crime rates. The youth of today has so many distractions. Why not give them an organized, healthy, supervised activity to participate in or to attend? Our energy should be spent not on opposing each other over lights, but uniting our community for all ages. How about putting our energy into getting rid of some of the homeless on American River Drive?
Thank you, Ms. Troughton. All right, Craig, you are... To be fair, I wanted to let her keep going, too.
She could take part of my time.
All right. Craig, you are up. I've got Troy Rousey up next.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing us to have the forum to discuss the addition of lights on the Jesuit campus. As parents, our number one concern for our children is their well-being and their safety. That is hopefully one item on which we can all agree. As a society, we find ourselves in the digital era, and its long-term impact on our children is unknown. A scene all too familiar is the daily fight with our children regarding screen time, video game usage, and it is a battle that impacts all of us. These 2 items have replaced playing in the park, riding bikes, or even walking the river. This behavior trend towards isolation and a lack of social interaction with other children. It also drains the imagination of our children and feeds into the instant gratification, which we all know as adults to be problematic. Adding lights to the Jesuit campus will foster a community gathering place and a sense of belongings. For those limited nights in the fall, families can drive together, bond together, cheer together, and quite frankly, spend some quality time without a fight over screen time or video games. Call it a return of yesteryear, where families could enjoy some togetherness. It will promote social interaction and imagination, both of which are zapped from screen time. Jesuit has a motto of men for others, but in reality, it's a school for others. And they have been great stewards in the neighborhood. There's absolutely no reason for them to alter that pattern of excellent behavior. Please support Jesuit's desire and parents in the local area that are longing for community events. Those community events also include the Air Show. River Cats fireworks, the State Fair, July 4th fireworks, and holiday lights in all of our neighborhoods, whether it's East Sac, Arden Park, or Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr. Sorrow.
Thank you.
All right, Troy, you are up. On deck, I've got Megan Sands.
Troy Rousey. I have been sworn in. My name is Troy Rousey. I live 3 blocks. I'm a fellow neighbor around the Jesuit High campus, and we are in full support of installing the field lights. We moved into the Jesuit Rio High School neighborhood 12 years ago, knowing that there would be school traffic, parking, and events, sporting events. Frankly, I was shocked when I learned that Jesuit didn't have lights and don't play football games on Friday nights. Since moving into the area, I have attended a couple Saturday games, and last year my family attended one of the Friday night games in which they used temporary lights. There was a stark contrast between the Saturday day games and the Friday night game I attended last year. The day game was poorly attended with no community support and very few student body spectators. Close friends and family seemed to be the only groups in the dispersed crowd. One game was so hot I had to leave early. Most of the crowd was gathered in a small structure area they have in front of their snack shack, all tight together. In contrast, the night game had a strong community presence, full student body section, and represented the true high school football experience. It was a great night for our family to walk home from that game. Our community and the student body deserve to have that experience for all the Jesuit events. Again, as a close neighbor to the school and a property taxpayer in the neighborhood, we support the lights. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rousey. All right, Megan, you are up, and on deck I've got Heather Reeves.
Good evening. I'm Megan Sands, and I've been sworn. I'm a junior at St. Francis High School, and I have been attending Jesuit football games since I was in grade school and braved the heat on Saturday games with my family as my brother played all 4 years, and he graduated from Jesuit in 2022. Now I'm at games with my classmates and local friends to cheer on Jesuit from the student section as much as possible. But them being on Sunday, the games, we have to juggle our own sports and activities, and this season had many conflicts as the game fell on SAT College Board exams. With Friday Night Lights, the games will create lasting memories. Many of my friends live directly across from Jesuit, so we're able to walk to and from the games together. We love our community and are proud to support Jesuit. We have heard the small vocal group of neighbors worried that the students will walk across their lawn, litter, and block the driveways. But I am here to say that is not us. Students from Jesuit and St. Francis are neighbors too. And we are students who are respectful to our community and proud to have the opportunity to come together for games for a safe and fun night. We know, and our dean and principals remind us, that good behavior is a must, and attending events is a privilege. But more so, we want to serve our community and be good citizens. I hope you think of all the faces of the students here tonight and vote yes to help turn on the lights. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you, Ms. Sands. All right, Heather, you are up, and I've got Ron Nosetti on deck.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Heather Reeves, and I've been sworn. I am also a Carmichael resident. I live close to Jesuit, and I'm one of the many supporters of the lights. Folsom High School, Pleasant Grove, Laguna Creek, Oak Grove, Consumnes Oaks, Franklin, Hiram Johnson, Bella Vista, Casa Robles, Del Campo, San Juan, Grant, Galt, Cordova, El Camino. The list goes on and on. Almost every single high school in every corner of the county has lights on their football field. There are two that stand out as not having lights, and that's Jesuit High School and Rio Americano. And that's because there have been a small handful of people in our neighborhood that have deprived what is literally thousands of students over the years of not being able to enjoy the camaraderie of going to an evening game with their friends. That is sad to me and just doesn't seem fair. The kids in our community want to be able to experience Friday evening games with their friends, just like every other kid in the county. All over the county, region, and state, schools with lights are surrounded by homes and neighborhoods, and they all symbiotically exist. Please don't let the few prevent the many the opportunity of what is a fun, wholesome American tradition. We aren't asking for anything out of the ordinary. We are simply asking that you let the kids in our community come together and enjoy an evening sporting event, just like every other kid in the county. Please support Jesuit getting lights. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reeves. All right, Ron, you are up, and I've got Kirk Kasigian on deck.
All right, I appreciate that. It did wonders for my self-esteem and having to raise that up when I came to speak. My name is Ron Nichetti, and I have been sworn. I'm the executive director of the California Interscholastic Federation, or CIF. We govern sports across the entire state of California. In interest of full transparency, I currently have a son who's a senior at Jesuit, and I was employed as the school's athletic director from 2000 to 2008. However, if any of our 1,624 member high schools asked me to appear on behalf, I would jump at the chance to do so. The CIF mission statement says in part, it's bigger than sports. The CIF provides students with the opportunity to belong, connect, and compete in education-based experiences. The CIF and our school communities support our students' journeys by developing impactful relationships through transformational educators and coaches who provide a healthy environment for growth and development. This isn't just about the players on the field, but also the experience for the general student body, the band, cheerleaders, student leaders, and the broader community to feel connected to their school and to find that place where they belong. I can't think of a better place for teenagers to be on a Friday night than at their school in a healthy and safe environment. I have the best job in the world where I have the opportunity to attend athletic events across the state that are played under the lights with students having fun simply hanging out with their friends, watching their classmates compete, while their families, if they haven't joined them at the game, are able to be at home knowing their children are safe. I also look forward to the day that any high school in California that wants to provide this type of education-based experience for young people are fully embraced by their communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nichetti. All right, Kirk, you are up, and I've got Sean Mahoney on deck. And I think we're about halfway there, just so you all know.
Well, good evening. Thank you. My name is Kirk Kasigian. I have been sworn. I live in the Del Deo neighborhood, which is, just about a block, maybe two, east of the school. And when I heard there was going to be evening games twice last season, I decided to conduct a little social experiment. The first game I attended with my 13-year-old son. He's a prospective student, wanted to check out, what that environment would be like because it hadn't happened before. And I was very impressed by just the energy and the safety protocols that were in place. I felt like a place where I would feel very comfortable with him going to a game by himself, or even in the future, my daughter attending that by herself with her friends without me. That's important. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of those types of safe places and events that you can send your kids to with the kind of comfort that they're going to be safe there. So that was important. The second game, I decided to stay home just to see what was, how loud it would be and how disruptive it might be. Both I should say both times, people did park in our neighborhood and walked to the game, and there was never any trash or disruption to us. Felt it was just a normal thing that people would do trying to get to the game. The second game, I stood outside the house, I listened outside, and honestly, I wish I was there. The energy and the sound, it just feels like it's a natural, it's a fun American experience. And I hope that is something the students get to have in the future there. Hope my son gets to have that experience. And I'd ask that you keep in perspective that the main impacts are 5 nights a year. And Jesuit is going to do their best to keep those impacts to a minimum, especially with the concentration of lights and the technology. I think the health and safety issues are real, and I thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Kasigian. All right, Sean, you are up. I've got Aaron Reeves on deck.
I'm in support of the project, but I'll go ahead and cede my time to the next speaker.
All right, Aaron Reeves, you are up, and I've got William Pevek on deck.
Hello, my name is Aaron Reeves, and I've been sworn.
I'd like to start by saying I live in the Carmichael neighborhood close to the school, and I strongly support lights at Jesuit High School, and this is why. At a daytime game, it's dangerously hot. At one game, my son's shoes literally melted to the pavement. Nobody's there, barely any student body, barely any kids. The few people that are there are huddled under umbrellas trying to limit the effects of the miserable heat. In contrast, when we were allowed to have our first evening game last year, it was beautiful weather, the community came together, and when I looked to my right, I saw the student body, laughing, smiling, having a great time, and cheering for their friends on the field. When I walked down to the snack bar, what I saw absolutely warmed my heart. There in the quad, I saw kids from grade school to high school standing shoulder to shoulder and face to face, talking, socializing with their peers. And guess what they weren't doing? They weren't on their phones, on video games or TikTok. The reason this warmed my heart so much is that it was literally the first time in my life I'd seen all the kids from the community gathered together like this. These kids are growing up in a different time than we did. They don't meet up on their bikes and roam around for hours like we did. They aren't meeting up to play football in the streets. These football games are an amazing opportunity for the kids in our community to learn to socialize and interact with their peers in a completely safe and fun environment. And I would argue that learning how to socialize and build relationships are some of the most important skills a kid can develop for mental health and wellness. So please, I'm asking the opponents of this to put aside your individual concerns for the greater good of the many kids that this will benefit. In a time where social media rules the day, these good old-fashioned football games gives our kids the opportunity for some real socializing. Yes, we need to have these games in the evening for the health and safety of the players on the field, but we also need to have these games for the hundreds of kids that will be there just being kids like we all used to be. These games are safe, they're fun, they're good for the community, but most importantly, they're good for the kids. And is there really anything more important? So please, commissioners, give our kids this opportunity. They need it now more than ever. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. All right, William, you are up, and on deck I've got Bernardo Hubbard. Is William Pavek in the audience who wants to speak? All right, we're on to Bernardo Hubbard. And I think we've gotten this one already. Megan Sands, you already got an opportunity to speak, correct? Michael Alcalay is on deck. Mr. Hubbard, please proceed.
All right. Good evening. My name is Bernardo Hubbard. Some people confuse me for Chris Lee, who spoke earlier, but I am Bernardo Hubbard, and I have been sworn. I'm a proud member of the Jesuit High School community, and I am in support of this project. Moving games to evening hours will alleviate concerns for heat-related issues. My elderly father, who hates to be called elderly, he's going to be 86 this June. He can't go to my son's football games anymore due to the heat, as has been discussed earlier this evening. And, you know, of course, it's not only a concern for the spectators, but also for the players playing in this extreme heat. You know, when your father turns 86, you're not guaranteed another opportunity to see your father the next day, and it's one of his favorite pastimes is to see his grandson play. And it means a lot to me personally, and I know it means a lot to him, and I know a lot of other people here tonight share the same experience. So I hope sincerely that we get these night lights and we can continue that experience. Equally as important as safety is community. Some of my best memories as a youth is attending Friday night football games with my family and seeing friends, making new friends, making new memories and experiences. I witnessed the camaraderie and pride that our community holds for our school, and I look forward to having that same Friday night lights experience here at Jesuit. What truly stands out for me in this whole process is the outreach effort undertaken by Jesuit to listen and understand the concerns of the community. Jesuit has shown an unwavering commitment to addressing these issues, and we've been reminded that it's not about us versus them, our side versus their side. It's about all of us. And I know Jesuit High School, the leadership and staff strongly embodies this sentiment. Before I wrap up, just want to thank the students that shared their perspectives and experience, and that they're part of this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hubbard. All right, I heard Michael Alcalay may not be in attendance anymore, but if you are, come on down. All right. Judy Press, you are up now, and Gaylord Moulds is on deck.
I yield my time to Barbara.
Yeah, so did we.
So Judy is not speaking this evening. Gaylord is not speaking.
I took his time.
All right. Next up, we've got Barbara Dougal. On deck, we've got Rich Santana.
Surprise you. Okay. Hi, I'm Barbara Dugal, and I have been sworn.
I'll give her some extra time since she's speaking on behalf of some other folks.
Yeah, thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay, so Barbara Dugal, I've been sworn. I'm on Ashton Drive near Wixford, and I am opposed to Jesuits Project for the following reasons. The first few I'm going to go through are regarding the environmental document itself. The first reason that I am opposed, and I don't think that the commissioners should consider the EIR tonight. I think it requires additional analysis. Basically, it regarded, one of them is the cumulative impact analysis needs to be conducted. I had provided comments to the county on this regarding the diesel lights at Rio Americano High School. I had provided back in February of 2022 a copy of a letter from Rio Americano regarding their proposed use of the diesel lights. And when I commented on the document, the county staff stated that they didn't have any knowledge of those lights, that they had no understanding from the board, the San Juan School Board, that they were proposing permanent or temporary lights. So they didn't consider that. The staff did not consider that as a reason to do a cumulative impact. The other thing regarding that is that, just lost my train of thought, is, okay, so they should do that. So they should also be looking at not just at the impact from the aesthetic standpoint from the cumulative impacts, but they should also be looking at, in my opinion, traffic, noise, etc. The comments that you've heard tonight about the impacts around Jesuit are now happening around the Rio general area. They've got a private rugby club that's using the lights 3 nights a week, and it's impacting parking. The same issues that have already been discussed with associated with Jesuit. There's another component that needs to be analyzed that wasn't included, and that is regarding the analysis, additional existing visual resources analysis that needs to be conducted from Jacob Lane and Regency Circle. In the document or in the response is it was stated that that they didn't need to do nighttime because the parkway is not available, but it is available. The gates are locked, yes, but people can access the parkway at night to ride their bikes, to recreate, and that is confirmed by the county parks comment on the document itself because they were concerned about glare. So, and I also had asked the county to take an analysis from the levee. People just don't walk on the parkway, they're also walking across the levee, and that wasn't done. So those are 2 reasons for the environmental document not to be approved or considered tonight. The other issue regarding the consideration of the EIR is that the biological resources and the effects on bats. And there was new information. There was a biological survey that was done on February the 10th. I don't know what prompted that analysis or that survey to be taken. But from that, they found that that there was a potential important roosting habitat for colonial bats, and that it said games would not be expected to cause permanent roost abandonment and loss of important roost habitat. Therefore, it was considered to be less than significant. But I don't think you can rely on the word expected. I think there should be mitigations that would monitor that to ensure that those impacts aren't occurring. There was another statement in response to this new information. Again, I think the document needs to be clarified and recirculated. But it says that about the habitat for foraging is gone. And it's gone because the natural turf was replaced by artificial turf. So that habitat has already been diminished and destroyed for the animals. So,
Thank you, Ms. Dugal. If you could make your closing comments.
Is that 4 minutes?
It is.
Okay. And also, I'm concerned about the aesthetics. I'm concerned about, well, I've sent you information on some of the issues. I think they're substantial. I think that the EIR really needs to be looked at and reanalyzed and recirculated.
Thank you,
I
Ms.
think the
Dugal.
mitigations need to be, beefed up on that.
All right, next up we've got Rich, and I've got Darlene Vera on deck.
Good evening. My name is Rich Santana. I've been sworn in, and I am for the lights at Jesuit High School. Esteemed panel members, as a minority parent of a freshman at Jesuit High School, I stand before you today to emphasize the profound significance of implementing Friday night lights at Jesuit High School. For many in our community, these events not only represent more than just sports, they symbolize hope, unity, and opportunity. By providing our children with the chance to shine under those Friday night lights, we are not only showcasing their talent, but also breaking down barriers and stereotypes. These events are a platform for our youth to defy expectations, to demonstrate resilience, and to inspire generations to come. As we always remember that game-winning goal, that touchdown, that interception, because we were there and witnessed that amazing event. It is through these lights that we illuminate the path to inclusivity, diversity, and equality. Let us not deprive our children of this transformative experience. Let us embrace the power of Friday Night Lights to not only illuminate the field, but also brighten the futures of all our children, regardless of their background, so they can have memories for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Santana. Darlene, you are up, and I've got David Tate on deck.
Hi, my name is Darlene Vira, and I've been sworn in. Okay, thank you. And I have been sworn in. I live on Whitehall Way in Sacramento for the past 35 years. My street has not been recognized as from Jesuit, and although I'm in Sacramento, I'm half a block away from Jesuit's field and half a block away from Rio's field, so I'm impacted by both schools. I strongly oppose the lighting of Jesuit Sports Complex. I will not repeat all the details or reasons that have been expressed online and in person opposing the lighting project. I just want to appeal to you, the Planning Commission, to do the right thing, to protect the neighborhood that we have maintained and protected, to keep it a desirable neighborhood to live in and raise our families. The neighbors have done this for over 60 years. Right now, we do not live in a quiet neighborhood with just local residential noise and traffic and parking. We deal with noise, traffic, and parking issues from both Jesuit and Rio every day, which has increased over the years with higher enrollments in both schools since they were built. And we deal with it. With the lighting that Jesuit and potentially Rio proposes, our neighborhood will be a nightmare to live in. With the added noise and traffic from night games that will last till 10 to 11 p.m., bringing in thousands of people. And as you know, sound travels farther at nighttime. Jesuit is a commuter school, not a neighborhood school. They would be inviting people from all over who don't necessarily share our values and who don't care about our properties and our right to have peace in our own backyards in the evenings. We want to enjoy our backyards after work on a Friday night from 5 o'clock till 10 o'clock, entertaining or just enjoying the peace and quiet. There are studies that show that people who are subjected to increased noise pollution, and increased traffic pollution affects our mental health. If the lighting project goes through, our neighborhood could start to deteriorate, a neighborhood that we have protected and taken pride in. I ask the Commission to consider how these lights will affect our neighborhood 10 years from now. Will our neighborhood still be the same? Or will it decay and deteriorate if people start to move out? There is absolutely nothing in Jesuit's proposal that benefits the neighborhood.
Thank you, Ms. Vera. If you could make your closing comments.
I can in just a...
Yep.
Jesuit needs to find a different solution and location to host evening sports games or build a new stadium elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm also a parent from Jesuit High School.
Thank you. All right, David, you are up, and I've got Sue Sperber on deck.
Good evening, Commissioners. And my name is David Tate, and I've been sworn. Thank you. I want to first start off, thank you for your service to our community. I know it takes a lot of your time to do this and be at hearings late evenings like this. I'm going to be brief. Coming late, most of my points have been made, and I'm going to appreciate, like you said, don't make them again. I will touch on just a couple things that should be noted again. Jesuit, as it was noted, was founded in 1963. It was here before the neighborhood. It was here before the levees. It was here. So was Rio. Rio came a few years later. So since the 1960s, area homebuyers have been well aware of these two high schools and all that entails, including the potential for future lights. It's been covered that most of the schools in the Sacramento region already have lights, and all the points about Saturday day games, those are all important things to highlight. I think it's been said, but those Friday night games last fall were magic. It was a special community time, and the kids enjoyed it and they relished in it. So that it cannot be highlighted how special that was for our community. I forgot to say at the beginning that I'm not only a Carmichael resident, born and raised, I'm an alumni. I have 2 students that have graduated already, and I'm a current parent. So I've been around Jesuit a long time. I have 2 older brothers that graduated in the early 80s. So this community is strong. And people say that, the community, not many students live around Jesuit. There are a lot of students. There's a lot of alumni that live around Jesuit. I live on Ashton Drive, which is a few blocks away. So, of course, I am supportive of this project and confident that Jesuit will take all reasonable measures to limit impacts. And as an active parent, alumni, and neighbor, I'm interested to see that happen. On behalf of myself and many alumni and parents, we are supportive and excited for this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tate. All right, Sue, you are up, and I've got Todd Sperber on deck.
I'm Sue Sperber, and I've been sworn. Oh my goodness, thank you.
And you all feel free to grab the microphones and move them in front of your mouth whenever you need to.
I graduated high school in 1962 after 4 years of those magical Friday night games. I am also a resident. Very excitedly, I was able to buy a piece of property on Piccadilly Circle, one of the 4 boundary streets of Jesuit. When we bought that property and built our home in 1967, I was so excited to be in a neighborhood with 2 wonderful high schools. That was one of the deciding factors of even moving there. So anything I could do to enhance my neighborhood by enhancing the schools around it, I am in favor of. And those Friday night lights would be wonderful. In addition to making my neighborhood a better place to be with those lights, I've also evaluated over the years how much I would appreciate our teenagers in my community having a safe, fun, great place to spend their Friday nights rather than roaming the streets or sitting in their bedrooms on a device. I love the idea of having a place for the kids in my neighborhood to go. And I have no skin in the game. My children did not go to Jesuit. They were at Rio Americano. But I'm so in favor of keeping the schools in my neighborhood just as good as they can be, and they would be enhanced by having a wonderful place to spend those Friday nights. I would like to respectfully disagree with my new neighbor, Elizabeth, who made the comment that we don't have a choice. We do have a choice. Jesuit was there before we got there. I've been there for 55 and a half years. And having good neighborhood schools only enhances. I made the choice to be there. So it's not that we don't have a choice. We have a choice when we move there. And I think that the schools in our neighborhood are greatly enhanced by having a place, a safe and wonderful, happy place to go. I relish, like Mr. John said, he relished those games. I relish that happy noise for the kids. And although I'm 79 years old, 8 nights a year I can stay up till 10 o'clock at night.
Thank you, Ms. Ferber. All right, Todd, you are up. And next up, we've got Christy Babb.
Well, it's pretty hard to go up after my mom, but I'm Todd Sperber, and I've been sworn. That's my mother. The house I was born and raised in was, 150 yards from Jesuit and probably 100 yards from Rio. The house I live in today is probably 200 yards away from Jesuit. My kids, one graduated from Rio, my boy graduated from Jesuit years ago, and my other daughter graduated from El Camino. And I can unequivocally tell you that my daughter that went to El Camino and had those Friday Night Lights experience, she was the winner. My oldest daughter, who was a cheerleader at Rio, we talk about the heat. Freshman year, she ended up passing out on the field. Luckily, they had ambulances at the game, and it was heat stroke. It was really scary as a parent. But what I'm going to tell you is, as a neighbor, the reason I moved, when I first bought my first house, it was in Land Park. When I had my kid, I moved straight back to the old neighborhood. Why? Because it's so great, so exciting to be there. My buddy who lives directly across the street from Rio Americano High School, he'll call me and he'll say, hey, Todd, there's a baseball game going on today. We'll go over, we'll grab chairs, and we'll go watch the game. Friday night, I don't care if I've got a kid there or not at Jesuit. It's fun to go with the guys, with your neighbors. Go hang out and have a good time. Be part of the neighborhood. What makes our entire neighborhood great is all these activities, these amazing schools. A good buddy of mine lives in Dallas, Texas. I flew out to see him. I graduated college with him, went out to see him. We went to the high school football game. He didn't have kids at the high school. And I said, why are we going to a high school game on a Friday night? And he goes, Todd, it's what we all do. 20,000 kids in Plano, Texas, 20,000 residents of Plano, Texas go to football games every Friday night. They see 20,000 kids. It's the best thing we could do for our neighborhood. Please approve the lights. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sperber. All right, Christy, you are up, and I've got Ivona Smith on deck.
Good evening. My name is Christy Babb, and I have been sworn in. I come before you tonight not only on behalf of the 800 members of the Jesuit High School Boosters Club, but also as a parent that has witnessed firsthand the dangers of athletes competing in this extreme Sacramento heat. Watching your child play football, trust me, is nerve-wracking enough, but seeing them collapse to the ground with severe cramps or stumble to the sideline vomiting is beyond frightening. This past football season, I personally witnessed players from both Jesuit as well as our opposing teams suffer from extreme heat exhaustion, including a coach, as previously has been mentioned. But guess what? This is all preventable with the addition of lights. Moreover, the availability of evening events can foster a stronger sense of community, school spirit, and pride. Beyond sports, these lights will transform into cherished memories for students, families, friends, and community members. Stadium lights at a high school are not unconventional in any way whatsoever. In fact, the majority of Sacramento high schools have stadium lights, and those that don't share a field with a partner school that does, still allowing those athletes to compete in the safest environments possible. I will end by saying that ensuring our student athletes, coaches, and officials from not just Jesuit but opposing schools have access to the safest playing conditions possible should not be looked upon as a sort of privilege, but a necessary step to ensure student safety. Investments like this should be celebrated, as we recently saw with Hiram Johnson High School. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Babb. Ivona, you're up, and Michael Armstrong, you're on deck. I may be saying it wrong. Ivona Smith?
She had to leave.
Okay. Michael Armstrong, you are up, and I've got Sean Merrill on deck. Starts with an M. I'm not real sure on that last name.
Good evening. I'm Michael Armstrong, and I've been sworn. Congratulations, alums, students, parents of Jesuit. I've admired your school for 35 years. I've got kids that took classes there. I've got kids that competed against you. And I'm impressed by what I heard tonight from your administration and your athletic department. You've listened. If this had taken place a year ago, I think we'd be close to closing. Unfortunately, the way it was handled for so long precludes me from just endorsing it. I've heard two things. I support Friday Night Lights, and I've heard I support lights. I support the former. I think that's for the reasons you've already heard and the audience has heard. There are many, many, many good, valuable reasons why change is good. Many years ago, there was a university in the northern part of Indiana that was pushed to the limit to forget their tradition, to forget their culture, and to put on lights for their college games. And they resisted for a long, long time. But people didn't think that they were Neanderthals. They just respected their tradition, their values. And no one tried to push that on that great university. Well, imagine if the shoe were on the other foot and it was the neighborhood that was trying to get lights, and Jesuits said no. Jesuit, again, congratulations. You have 14 national championships under your belt. You have 133 Sac Joaquin section championships under your belt. You have 10 Cal State championships under your belt, all without lights. My point is that they are the gold standard, and they probably want to be Servite, but Servite has no lights, so maybe that's not appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Armstrong. If you can make your closing comment.
Okay. Thank you for everybody that came here and both sides that gave us your time and your expertise. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, Sean, you are up, and I've got Jim Donahue on deck.
Good evening. I'm Sean Merrill. I graduated from Jesuit in 1998. I played for the football team, and I was a flanker as well. Somehow my jersey still fits me this evening. I grew up on Jacob Lane, and now I live on the same street with my wife and two kids. When we bought our house in 2016, we knew the high school was across the street, and Rio Americana was close as well. And we expected there to be a little noise from time to time. These schools were here long before we were there. We also anticipated that when school ended, there would be some congestion. That being said, it is much less crowded and much less noisy than even we thought. And studies suggest that having evening events with lights will actually reduce the traffic due to overlapping events. We also know that the noise will be mitigated and there will not be play-by-play during these sporting events, contrary to popular belief. At the end of the day, what's important to me and my family is that the children of our community have a safe place to play. We love being neighbors to the school. My kids love hearing the sounds of the pep band playing, the horn that signals the end of the quarter, the school bell at noon, and the elation of a touchdown or home run echoing through the stands. We welcome these sounds as it symbolizes to us a community together, as well as kids having wholesome fun for a change. Not only Jesuit students, but those throughout the greater Sacramento area. As students at Jesuit High School, we were taught to be leaders in our communities, and most importantly, to be men for others. I can think of no more perfect way than to open our field to the broader community at large, giving teenagers a place to spend an evening that keeps them safe from danger, off the road at night, and away from the temptations of drugs and alcohol. We can take a few evenings of cheering as neighbors so that they can have fun and live a fruitful teenage experience. If nothing else, It gives us the opportunity to connect with other neighbors and have a hot dog. Let's give the kids a chance to experience football under the lights. Thank you. And I knew I'm sworn. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Merrill. All right, Jim, you are up, and I've got Craig Milligan on deck.
Thank you. My name is Jim Donahue, and I have been sworn. And I have several hats on today. I am a graduate of Jesuit High School just 49 short years ago. I was once a senior. I played football at Jesuit as well. Look what the heat did to me. Don't let that happen to these kids. I'm also a dad. My son graduated in 2007. I'm a trustee. I'm the chair of the Board of Trustees. So I speak to you on with all those hats on. I was also a former neighbor. I grew up on 1214 Macaulay Circle. My parents had the foresight to buy a lot in 1962. You saw the picture. I think their lot was in that picture. It was just dirt, and Jesuit was coming up out of the ground. They knew that was happening. They moved there for that purpose. They had 4 sons. They sent the 4 sons. They sacrificed financially and sent 4 sons to Jesuit. We all played sports. We gave our blood, sweat, and tears literally to that field. My parents, we all moved out of the house, of course, went to college. My parents lived there for another 50 years. They sold in 2018. But during that time, my dad served on the chain gang. He served during the heat of those games. He served until they took his chains away. He continued to go to games until they took his car away. And, I ended up taking him to the games myself the last few years. I took him to a game last year in the heat, and he almost passed out at halftime. I had to take him out of there. He was suffering a heat stroke. I took him to a game this past year, September 1st, 2023. I'll never forget that night. That was the night they played St. Ignatius under the lights. I brought my dad there, and his eyes just lit up. The stands were full. The cheering section was going. The band was going. The lights were on. The kids were having a great time. It was a great community. I'm also speaking on behalf of an organization, by the way. Can I get an extra
Sure, go ahead.
couple? Thanks. In any event, it was so electric, and it was so nice to be there. And as it turned out, that happened to be his last game at all, because he passed 5 weeks later. And, the heat does matter. It's a big deal. It's a safety issue for the players, the coaches, the fans, young and old. I hear the argument, but it's always been that way. You played 50 years ago that way. We can keep going. But that doesn't make it smart, wise, or correct. There's a reasonable alternative available here that everybody else in the county has. It's called lights. You flip a switch, and you've got safety considerations. You got good temperatures for students to play, student athletes. When my brothers and I played football, the coaches thought it was smart to withhold water as an incentive for us to play harder in the practices. They taught us to lead with our heads making tackles. Those things are all archaic and antiquated. Nobody would do that in this day and age. That's crazy. You'd be fired in a second as a coach. You'd be banned from the profession. It's almost the same thing with lights. Why make these kids play in the heat like that? It's just not right. The medicine, the technology is there. The medical evidence is there. Common sense dictates, let's put the lights on. Let's flip the switch. Let's let them play at night. Let's give them a break from the heat.
Thank you, Mr. Donahue. Can you make your closing comments? Okay. All right, Craig, you are up, and I've got Wendy Milligan on deck.
Hello, Craig Milligan. I've been sworn. I'm a neighbor close by, Jesuit. Been there for going on 20 years. So I'm in opposition. Primarily, I wanted to speak. What we're supposed to talk about is the EIR. Number one, the adjustments or amendments that have been made to it. There was a report, the miles travel report or whatever, from Kimmy Horn, and I believed it used a wrong number of games. I think on your addendum 7 or attachment 7, if I can just get a total number of nights the lights will be used. Because when it all started and it was presented to the CPAC meeting, it was around 57 games. Now I think we're at 258 possible nights that the lights will be used. And a lot of the emotion I hear talks about Friday Night Lights. I don't have that much of an opposition to 5 to 8 games, but it's much more than that, and you need to be aware of that as how many nights that's going to be used. There's 180 nights required to get money from the state. There's going to be 258 nights use of this field. Is that right? I don't know what your map says, but that's what they're going for. So I have a concern about that. The other one is, as far as concessions, no one has talked about, there's limited parking in front of Rio Americana on one side. There is no limited parking outside of Jesuits football field, and that's the neighbors that are most concerned with this, I being one of them. So if there was even, maybe we had parking permits for those residents so they could park there. And there's obviously plenty of parking on the Jesuit campus for football games. They even use the extra soccer field and the track field for parking when they need to. But if they could limit it, keep it out of the neighborhood, that would go a long way to mitigate the problems. So I just wanted to know if the Kimmy Horn study used the right number of nights, because vehicle miles traveled is how the EIR was formed. And I believe it was limited and not in the full scope of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Milligan. All right, Wendy, you are up, and I've got Felipe Fuentes on deck.
Raise it for me versus my husband. I'm Wendy Milligan, and I have been sworn. I live at 4836 Oak Vista Drive, and we have lived there for 20 years. Craig and I moved into that neighborhood, and we are part of the Catholic school community. One of our daughters went to Our Lady of the Assumption. The other one currently works there. And when we moved into Oak Vista, one of the first things we did when our girls were in kindergarten is we went over to Jesuit to enjoy a basketball game, a soccer game. I think Craig and I realized one day we were there all day watching soccer, water polo, and oh gosh, there's a football game. Let's stay. So we are a part of the community. However, I am opposed to this, and agreeing with Craig, if we could limit it to how many football games. I'm a realtor in the community too, and I will tell you, in the past, I could always say it was a selling feature to say I've got Jesuit around the corner, I've got Rio down the street. These are selling features for our community. However, I did just have a listing on Lantern Court in November, and when the buyer read my disclosure statement, and being a community member, of course, I'm going to disclose that Jesuit has a proposal for lights. The buyer decided not to make an offer on the house, so I have seen the impact. Anyhow, I am opposed, but thank you, and that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Milligan. All right, Felipe, you are up, and then Jim Gillum is on deck. All right, Felipe, going once, going twice. Jim Gillum, you are our last public commenter, unless I get another request shortly. Are you bringing your bag so you can take off?
No, bring my bag so that I don't leave it unattended. I don't want the airport robot coming and exploding it. Jim Gillum, member of the community, grew up in the neighborhood. My parents still live there. Out tonight after having had the interesting experience of sitting through the public comment opportunity for this EIR. I was here for another reason that night and listened to the comments about the traffic study and some of the other noise concerns and concerns about spilling of light and all the variety of things that were expressed that night. And, I sit through a lot of hearings because I represent projects for a living. And it's always frustrating as an applicant to hear those concerns and kind of have to just sit there and absorb it. So after the hearing ended, I had the opportunity to talk to some of the administration at the school and ask them how they were handling the comments that they heard. Some of them seemed like they warranted some outreach and some feedback, and I was very pleased to hear the response about the community outreach that they had done and were continuing to do, and how they had heard the concerns about the noise and were looking into options. And I looked at the final EIR when it came out, And I looked at the changes that were made by the county and the consultant, the conditions that were added. And I was really pleased to see the changes that have been made and the work that have been done to address as many of the concerns as that they could. So as a member of the community, I wanted to come out and say, I hear that there's concerns with neighbors, and there always are, every project. But we're talking about a larger community benefit that I think is important to consider when you're approving this item. And I think you should approve this item because I do think it has a broader community benefit. And I think that they've done a great job of addressing the concerns they could. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gillum. All right, just check in with the clerk. Do we have any other public comments?
Public comments in queue.
All right. With that, we will go ahead and close public comment. At this time, I would like to give the applicant team the opportunity to address any public comments that were made this evening.
Thank you, Chair. In respect for your time, we're happy to yield our rebuttal. We are available to answer questions. If there are any comments you heard that you would like to ask us questions about, we're happy to respond. But in the interest of time, we'll yield the rebuttal. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll look to the commissioners. Any comments that were made by the public that you would like the applicant team to address this evening or staff to address this evening? Go ahead, Commissioner.
Do you have a list also?
I've got a short list, but
Okay.
why don't you take us off?
I have a very short list also. I think it's maybe a question for staff. There was a comment made of in relation to the EIR and the VMT and a connection between the number of evenings that the lights were used. I'm not hearing that, well, I'll phrase it this way. It's my understanding that the bulk of those uses are for practices which are probably already generating some amount of VMT that would either logically not increase. Because it's really just a shifting of time. Practices going from 3 to 6, from 4 to 7.
I can provide a little bit of context, and I did with that last public commenter went back to the technical study that was prepared. It does appear that the table of uses that I'm seeing is consistent with what you saw from the applicant earlier this evening in terms of what was used to support the traffic analysis. In terms of the analysis contained in the EIR, what we look at for impact purposes is exactly what you're describing, the change from the baseline conditions to what would be a worst case scenario with the project. So it's true, there are already a number of vehicle trips associated with the events that are happening on campus. So while the analysis acknowledged that there would be some additional trips with these high capacity events, it wasn't a significant enough increase to deem a significant impact related to VMT.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Other Commissioner Corona Sabagnano?
I think so. I wanted to ask a question about the no event parking signs. I think there was a comment about adding streets to that.
Tennyson and Marlboro, I think. That's what I had.
I have that noted too.
Mm-hmm.
Is the question that can you add?
Yeah, or what was the reasoning for not adding?
I don't think there was a reason for
Over
not
to the
adding it. I
applicant.
think we just picked streets that were immediately adjacent to the stadium and that saw the most impact from what we were hearing.
Can we have the applicant also?
Thank you. And I'll echo what was mentioned by Ms. Gutierrez. It was because we used the streets that were immediately adjacent and come off of American River Drive. I believe the commenter said a statement about Marlboro, which to get to Marlboro, you either have to go down Jacob or down Tennyson to get to Marlboro. So the thought is if we turned those cars around before they could go down Tennyson or Jacob, that they would never get to Marlboro in the first place. That being said, if it would make the neighbors more comfortable that we put signs and people at Marlboro, we're willing to do that as well. It's not much further down the street. And it was just the thought was if they couldn't get to that road in the first place, that they probably wouldn't go down there. But there is a situation where somebody maybe decides not to listen to our person and then sneaks around the corner to park on Marlboro. So if it would be your commission's pleasure, we'd happily put the signs there as well.
And then can you, sorry, before you go, can you talk about the non-Jesuit events and then the rugby, private rugby team that was mentioned that uses?
I believe the private rugby team is actually at Rio Americano. We don't have a private rugby team utilizing Jesuit's stadium. The non-high school events that occur at Jesuit were mentioned. We have a flag football league. We have the parochial athletic league for youth, as well as JJM for youth. Also to the comment, why does it say that you can have night events for high school students and not just Jesuit? The answer to that is occasionally there's a situation where the CIF will call a school with lights and say, we have two teams that have a conflict, there's a playoff, right? We need a neutral site to host an event. Can you chip in? And schools, typically they're a part of the program, say yes to that. So on a rare occasion, maybe once a season, another team might need to play under the lights, and we try to accommodate, just like if we needed accommodation for one reason or another, we would hope another school would accommodate us.
Thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Checking them off my list over here, too. I appreciate that. Anyone? Commissioner Conklin? At the moment, what else did I have here? Just about noticing. We've heard a little bit of comments about noticing between the different CPACs, and I understand this is a little strange because it does border that, but notice was given for 1,500 feet. Seems larger than I'm used to a notice. So what's the legal requirement for notice? And then can you confirm that we met the legal requirement or exceeded the legal requirement?
Yeah, the legal requirement is 500 feet or 30 unique addresses. So we go 500 feet, and if we don't get that 30 unique addresses, we'll go farther out. So we, in this particular case, knew that there was a lot of interest and it would affect larger than that 500-foot radius. So it was actually the Carmichael CPAC that requested 1,500 feet from the project site. That includes properties in Arden Arcade and in Carmichael. So it's all property owners and tenants within 1,500 feet. It's not exclusive to the Carmichael community members.
Thank you for that clarification. I think that's all of my list. Does anyone else have any other comments they want addressed by the applicant or staff? All right. Seeing none, we will move on to deliberation. Anyone want to kick us off this evening? Commissioner Conklin?
Yeah, I'll jump in. Well, I want to thank county staff again for the analysis. I also would like to thank both sides for, I think, a very robust conversation and for their patience and civility. As a father of four kids in high school, I know firsthand the need of making sure that they're in a safe environment after hours. But I'm also sympathetic to the residents that live immediately adjacent or nearby the area. I too live just a few hundred feet away from a campus for the last 20 years that has Saturday morning activities with a large PA, so I am familiar with that scenario. We're up here trying to strike a balance between protecting the residents' interests and community needs and ensuring that the balance there of what the applicant is seeking. I've met with every resident who's reached out to schedule a time and to discuss the applicant's proposed project. I have family and friends that immediately live in that area. I've heard about this more times than I probably want to, as this issue has been orbiting my life for several months now. As I'm looking through this list that was given to me over the weekend from some of the residents of, what some of their desires or must-haves, and looking through security and requiring the stadium lights to be dimmed at certain times, sound limiters and caps on decibel levels, annual reports, and I've seen that all in the into the conditions that have been accepted by the applicants. And so I appreciate the process. I think the process has been well laid out and vetted from design review to environmental. So again, I just want to make those comments, kind of setting the table and thanking for all the parties for providing their comments on this proposal.
Thank you, Commissioner Conklin. Anyone else want to chime in this evening or make a motion?
I'll just, I guess I see what is in front of us, and I won't wax on unpoetically here, but this seems to be a real balancing, as my colleague described, really one of like a utilitarian approach of like, there seems to be, a little bit of a tug of war between what folks want to do and use with their property and the expectations that they have. From, I guess, my understanding of the project, a couple of things. One, I don't have reason to, I guess, question the sufficiency of the EIR, which is before us tonight. That seems to be thorough and comprehensive. I think the applicant has addressed many of the concerns to the extent that they can of the neighborhood. And I think just, while not being a Jesuit alumni and honestly one of the schools that you competed against and often beat, I think, some of the comments of, well, there's no community benefit here, and I see it very facially differently. Absent the Friday night lights, I think Jesuit very clearly brings a benefit to this community. And I think the addition of the lights brings an opportunity for community building greater than what is currently available. So I think with that, I would be supportive of a motion. I think that there's some technical pieces to maybe what a motion needs to include. And I don't know if Commissioner Conklin, if you have those, so I'll maybe leave that to you.
I don't have any additions.
Okay.
I will say that as a graduate of Christian Brothers, I do take issue with the slide that indicated that CB was number 12 and Jesuit was number 9. I do not have any specific suggestions other than what's already been agreed to or at least proposed to by county staff by eliminating item 12, I believe it was.
Eliminating item 12 and striking the word evening from condition 10.
Correct. So yeah, with that, I would, if there's a motion to move, I would second.
There has not been a motion yet.
Okay.
Are you making the motion now?
I'll make a motion.
All right. So with condition 10 striking evening and condition 12 stricken.
Correct.
Perfect. Do I have a second?
I would second that.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Commissioner Corona-Seveniano, any comments before we call for a vote?
Yeah, so I just want to acknowledge again and just thank the students for being here, sitting through a 3-hour meeting on a Monday, which I'm sure you have homework and other things to do. Really appreciate you being engaged and being here. I am supportive of this project. I agree with a lot of the comments that have been said that, Friday night football is magic. It's special. I think some of my favorite memories growing up, and I didn't go to Jesuit High School, but or Christian Brothers or any Sacramento school, but it was, those coming together as a cheerleader, watching my 4 brothers play football, and all the sports that they played with my family, with friends, relatives. Those are just some of the, my best memories that I have growing up. I do think that the EIR is sufficient. It's balanced. I appreciate all the work that the applicant has done to try to meet the needs of the community. I think, definitely encourage ongoing conversations, ongoing work and engagement of them, and trying to find other areas where you can come together on some agreements. The only thing that I think I'm still kind of maybe hoping for, recognizing there's a motion already, is just that additional streets or additional places where the signs could be placed of no parking in the neighborhood. I think, putting out a sign, people will park, but I think just putting out a sign recognizing that the campus wants to value their community. I think the more we can do that, if that's amenable, I would be supportive of that. But either way, I'm supportive of the project.
Thank you. I think that brings up a good point of since we are going to codify basically this Friday night protocol, what happens when the applicant wants to do more to protect the community or address that? Are they allowed to make changes to that? I'm sorry, I say Friday night protocol. I mean evening event protocol that's in there. Can they just update it to include more protection for the neighborhood? Or do we need to update it tonight and lock it down?
Right, are we sitting on the floor?
Yeah, I think.
Right, you should get clarity as to whether the protocol is officially being incorporated into the conditions of approval.
It is.
It is. So the answer to your question, can they do more voluntarily? Yes, but we can't enforce anything more than what's in the protocol right now.
Got it. So I think Commissioner Corona Sabiniano's request was to include the Marlboro-Tennyson intersection as part of the Friday evening protocol, or I'm saying it again, as part of the evening event protocol.
We also have condition 19 that talks specifically about the street signs, which you could add it there as well if you'd like.
Let's take a look at that real quick. So on to entrances from American River Drive into Piccadilly Drive, Tennyson Way, and Jacob Lane, and the intersection of Marlboro Way and Tennyson Drive, Tennyson Way. So we've got.
So my question would be, Chair.
Yes.
I'm looking at the map now and somewhat familiar with the area. I think the applicants were trying to stymie runaway vehicle traffic from pouring out into some of these secondary, if not tertiary, streets away from American River Drive. I feel that adding to this list could be a whack-a-mole situation, and I think that's what's kind of baked into the annual report that would be presented back to the county for any needed changes or adjustments.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is some.
I don't, staff, you might disagree. I read that condition, the report condition, as looking for noncompliance with these current conditions, not looking for problems that weren't addressed
Right.
at the time of approving the permit. So if you don't have those additional streets in there, there's no enforceability to add those.
But if we're adding streets that are 2-3 blocks away, at what point do we draw the line?
That is up to you guys completely. It's a factual issue.
Okay, if you could stop with the comments from we'll deliberate up here. Thank you for your feedback. All right. So really, it's discussion, I get it. I get the concerns of whack-a-mole on that. I'm looking at a map, and I do see, if the applicant, could you clarify, is Piccadilly Circle is both entrances to Piccadilly Circle, I'm guessing? Thank you.
The applicant has put up signage at the Piccadilly Circle entrance closest to campus. We're not doing the far western side of Piccadilly, which is across from Whitehall.
Okay. And can you guys comment on anything that you saw during those night games or any other games? I think it was only the night games that were there.
I did walk Piccadilly at the 2 night games, down Piccadilly and around the corner, and didn't see parking. I did not continue on to the other side, but we did not receive any complaints about parking on Piccadilly on that side.
All right, so I think probably the easiest way to handle this is Commissioner Corona Savignano, do you want to propose an amendment to the motion? Do you feel strongly enough to make an amendment to the motion to include other streets?
I mean, I just heard the applicant say earlier that they were fine with adding that street, so I thought why not add it? It's parallel to American River. Some of those homes are just on the other side.
As far as the Tennyson Marlboro intersection?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And just to confirm, Chair Rathel and Ms. Savignano, Member Savignano, it's adding those streets where the high school would be required to put a sign during the evening events as part of their evening protocol. Is that correct?
I think they're putting a person, not just a sign.
But there's no other, I just want to be sure there's no other infrastructure improvements above and beyond that.
I'm hearing some.
So I'm concerned with personnel out there and safety. So a sign seems sufficient.
The condition 19 is just for no event parking signage.
Just signage, okay. Sorry, that was my mistake.
Thank you.
So am I hearing you would like a modification of condition number 19 to include Tennyson and Marlboro?
Yes.
Got it.
Motion to amend?
Sure.
Okay.
All right. So we have a motion to amend to include the intersection of Tennyson and Marlboro Way. Do I have a second?
That's a good point. You can raise that.
Second.
My question is, condition 19 already includes Tennyson Way, so.
It's the intersection of Tennyson Way and American River Drive is my understanding of condition number 19. Is that correct?
That's correct. It would be amended to read, so starting at including but not limited to the entrances from American River Drive onto Piccadilly Circle, Tennyson Way, and Jacob Lane, as well as the intersection of Tennyson Way and Marlboro Way.
Understood. All right.
Procedurally, you just, with the second here, you just vote on that revision to the condition. You're not voting on the entire project. We'll do that next.
Understood. Any comments on the amendment before I call for a vote on the amendment? All right. Please call the roll on the amendment to the motion on the floor.
So Commissioners Borja.
Yes on the amendment.
Okay, Conklin.
Yes.
Corona Savignano.
Yes.
Devlin.
Aye.
And Rathel.
Yes.
And the motion carries for the amendment.
All right. So the motion on the floor is now amended to include the intersection of Tennyson Way and Marlboro Way. Would anyone like to make any other motions to amend for any other intersections? Sorry, I'm being very procedural about this, but it just helps us to clarify our discussion around it. All right, hearing none, I believe I gave Commissioner Corona Savignano the chance to speak, but Commissioner Borja, any closing comments?
Yeah, I just want to say it's almost 9 p.m. I really appreciate the community members, both the neighbors who have provided us with their concerns, the applicants, the Jesuit high school students that were here. Really, really thank you all for being participant in this process. I played high school football. I threw in the fields in Jesuit on Saturdays. We lost a lot against Jesuit. But when I look at this issue, I look back at the training manual that was provided to us as expectations as planning commissioners, and there's like 5 things there that they always ask. When looking at projects, do they connect people to the community? Do they protect property value? Does it improve economic development and quality of life? Does it set expectation? And does it provide a forum for reaching or at least getting to a consensus? And I believe that while this is a very lengthened process, it was a necessary difficulty that we needed to face and change. For me, as somebody who also would like to be able to live next to a high school that has stadium lights, it's very difficult. But also I looked at the concerns at the environmental impact report. I looked and read 222 pages of the EIR and looked at about 346 pages of the Carmel EIR that, as the applicant had mentioned, had been challenged and had brought up further case precedents on what had happened on a very similar neighborhood where the neighbors were trying to preserve a certain perspective and way of life. And ultimately, in Monterey and in Carmel, the board had a unanimous support because they saw, and what the community members saw was the value that the lights added, not only for the physical infrastructure in the immediate community, but the benefits for both the students and health, safety, and the generations to come. And with that, I'm supportive of the project. I think that there is a long journey ahead, hopefully not too long, that it would impact all of the community members, but I do really call for conversations to continue, and there were comments that were provided to both the commissioners and the staff and the applicants about making communications accessible, not just posting on the website, but also there were some neighbors that mentioned that there might be challenges for folks who may not be as astute in using digital communications. And so as a commissioner, I just hope that the applicant would recognize that and really build with their neighbors all throughout, and hope that, Jesuit's been here for many, many decades, and hope that it'll still continue to support the community in decades to come. So just want to say thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Borja. I'll conclude with really echoing comments. The commissioners up here, I think there's substantial community benefit, not just to the Jesuit community, but to the community of the Sacramento County at large. And I just really appreciate everyone coming down. I appreciate the engaged residents that live near, making their concerns known to Jesuit and staff and us, so we could hopefully mitigate and address those to the fullest extent possible. I think Jesuit has done a great job of really incorporating those conditions in, and staff has done a great job of making sure that those conditions are clear and easy to understand as the times change going forward. I really think that, if I would have looked at this project a year ago or 2 years ago when it was submitted, I wouldn't have seen all the conditions that have been placed on this project as being necessary. But throughout the process, I think Jesuit has been very accommodating with addressing those. And I think there's substantial benefits like crosswalks to keep kids safe in the neighborhood, and I really think that is helpful to the community. So I am in support of the project and comfortable with the analysis. So we have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Members Borja,
Yes.
Conklin,
Yes.
Corona Sabagnano,
Yes.
Devlin,
Aye.
and Rathel.
Yes.
And the motion carries with the amendment of striking evening from condition number 10 and striking condition 12 completely. Is that correct? I'm sorry.
And amendment to condition 19.
And the amendment to condition 19. Thank you.
Thank you all. Congratulations to Jesuit. All right, we'll move on now to. We still have a meeting ongoing. We'll just take a moment as they file out. If you all could carry on your conversations outside of the chambers. Thank you. If you all could move to the lobby. All right, we still have a few items on the agenda, so if you could move to the lobby. Everyone that's still in the chambers, we have a few more items on the agenda. If you could please move to the lobby for your conversations. If you're going to stay in the chambers, if you could grab a seat. All right, we'll move on to item number 2, the Planning Director's Report.
All right, Commissioners, I'll keep it brief tonight. You may recall that at our last meeting, you had requested a report back on wireless communication facilities. Given tonight's hearing, we decided to push that to the next hearing, so the 25th? 6th? 5th. 25th, I can count, 14 days. Yep, 25th, you'll have that. That's all I've got tonight.
Miscellaneous scheduling items?
Yes. Okay, so the 25th, the only hearing item that you have scheduled that night is the general plan annual report, and it's a workshop, right? It's not a hearing. Do they make a motion on that one? Okay. So there's that one, and then like Planning Director Smith said, you will have a report back on wireless facilities. April 8th, we do have 2 items on the agenda, both hearing items. One is a map time extension. The other one is we're moving through a request to rescind alcohol minor use permits for restaurants as part of our streamlining efforts. So we'll be bringing that to you for consideration as well. Does anyone know if they are going to be absent either of those days? Okay. Okay. All right. That's miscellaneous scheduling. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Chair, for the record, there were no public comments for item numbers 2 or 3, and there are no public commenters in the phone queue for 4.
Excellent. Thank you all for your time tonight. We'll go ahead and adjourn at 9:05.
All right.
Have a good night.